I'm going to get on Facebook, too.
Hello, and you are listening to the Radulich in Broadcasting Live UFC 174 Alternative Commentary. We are very excited to bring you this special tonight. I, of course, am not in here alone. I've got the band back together again, the triple threat, the 411 ground and pound, esteemed colleagues. First, from New Jersey, he is the pugilistic pontificator, ladies and gentlemen, to call the action as he sees it. No other way can he do it. Mr. Pat Mullin, how you doing, sir?
This is apropos, and that don't mean you're digging in the garden with farm implements, baby.
All right, and he got a night off from the live commentary, so he gets to step out of the Howard Lederman chair and into the box here with us to do live commentary. He's going to be weighing in, telling us what he sees and how he sees it, and warding off Clucky wherever he may be hiding. Ladies and gentlemen, the authority on evil, Mr. Robert Winfree.
You know, I might be an authority on evil, but even I'm not evil enough to rob Ross Pearson the way Clucky did. If I see that feathery bastard, I'm going to rip his head off.
Now, folks, you might be wondering, what are these three fools from formerly, some of us, from 411 doing here? Well, for the last couple of years, we, other folks that write for the site on the who have their own podcast, have been lamenting, complaining, castigating, outright screaming about the commentary for the UFC in the name of Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. Now, we've experimented, 411 luminaries, Jeremy Lambert and Say McCarty experimented with this once a little while ago, but there was more of a Mystery Science Theater 3000 thing going on. Tonight, we're not just going to complain about the commentary, we're doing something about it. Mute your televisions, folks. Mute your televisions, get Mike Goldberg and Joe Rogan out of your ears, and listen to the former 411 Ground and Pound radio show guys do the best they can at providing an alternative. This is the free market, baby. You don't have to go to the store and be forced Joe Rogan down your throat. That sounds terrible. You have an opportunity.
No, but it's pretty accurate.
You have an opportunity here with us to get a different perspective, different commentary, better commentary. We've never done it before, but we're doing it tonight, and I can already guarantee you this is going to be better commentary than Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. At the very least, you're not going to have Robert Winfree and I screaming for 5 minutes to tell you to buy the pay-per-view. I can tell you that right now. We will also not be telling you things are tight and deep when they damn well are not. Right, Pat?
That remains to be seen.
All right.
I'm convinced that Joe Rogan's constant exclamations about tight and deep are him subtly saying, please hire me to do live commentary for porn.
It'd be really funny to see Joe Rogan calling porn. Oh, it's tight and deep. Ugh.
He is friends with Dave Attell, who has that great show on Showtime where he calls old porn.
I tried watching that once. Ugh.
Why?
Because it's fantastic.
Because it was Dave Attell. All right. If you haven't been following
Dave Attell porn,
let's go over what we know so far. On the prelim card on UFC Fight Pass, Jason Sago defeated Josh Shockley via TKO in the first round at 4 minutes and 57 seconds. Michinoro Tanaka defeated Roland Delorme by decision.
not with the Michinoku driver.
That's right.
Sadly, no.
It was funny because I saw the name there and immediately my brain went Tacha Michinoku. Wrestling. Uh, on FX, by the way, Robert, do you have any idea why tonight they decided to go with FX and not Fox Sports 1? What's going on Fox Sports 1 that took precedent?
World Cup.
Yeah, something that is actually, a worldwide sport and draws huge numbers and viewership and chatter.
World Cup and NASCAR.
I was not aware of that. I thought soccer was only things that little kids did at the Y.
Yeah, get out of your American bubble.
I will not, sir.
He's not a dirty commie pinko. Way to go, Mark. Be American.
That's right. On FX,
Yes, we'll just put on gobs and gobs of padding and play for 30 seconds at a stretch, still get blown up, and then complain about concussion syndrome and blown out knees.
I played rugby. I don't know what you're talking about. All right.
Congratulations, sir. You played a manly sport. I am honored to know you.
Tai Young Bang Bang Jang one-man gang defeated the Raging Cajun Johnson by KO in the third round at 2 minutes and 1 second. Yves Jabouin defeated Mike Easton, and the fall of Mike Easton continues.
You can't fall when you start out that low.
Valerie Letourneau defeated Elizabeth Phillips by split decision, and I believe Robert Winfree, if you can give us 30 seconds, what was your impression of that fight? Because you were wondering how that was a split decision.
It shouldn't have been. I suppose I should rephrase that. There was a lot of standing, a lot of trading, a lot of that. Phillips probably got the first round because she landed a pretty substantial right hand. Looks like to have broken the orbital bone of Letourneau. But the other 2 rounds, Letourneau landed more. She landed better. I'm just a little confused as to how someone could view, oh, look, they're moving forward and winging a bunch of punches that miss. Oh, no, wait. That's exactly what MMA judges look for.
Do you believe it's fallout from the Mary Kay Letourneau trial?
Possibly.
And in your prelim main event, Kichi, I'm never going to stop doing that, by the way. Kichi Kunimoto defeated Daniel Sarafian, and there was much rejoicing in the Winfree home by submission, rear naked choke at 2 minutes and 52 seconds of the first round. All right, our fight card tonight on pay-per-view. We start off the night with Flying Ryan Jimmo versus Ovince St. Preux, straight out of Tennessee, y'all. Now listen.
That's your hot opener. You couldn't do better than that, UFC, than these 2 schmucks.
Well, Ryan Jimmo's Canadian, so that's why he's on the card, and Ovince St. Preux needed a fight. I believe wasn't he supposed to fight someone else, or am I thinking of a different card?
Hang on.
I know he was supposed to fight Thiago Silva at a point, but then Thiago Silva...
That might be what I'm thinking of. In any case, Pat Mullin, Flying Ryan Jimmo. He can either knock you out with one punch, or he can win a fight against Sokuju in such a poor fashion that I almost quit MMA. What's your thoughts on this fight as we go forward with our hot opener at light heavyweight, Ovince St. Preux versus Flying Ryan Jimmo?
This seems like a keep busy fight for a guy that people are very high on in Ovince St. Preux, thinking that there's a big future ahead of it for him. And he's got some names on his resume that you'll recognize, guys like Benji Radek, Jason Day, John Vellante, Strong Island, and Nikita Koloff, the Russian Nightmare. His only loss recently has been to Gegard Mousasi, which is a pretty good level of opposition. He got a performance of the night bonus in his last fight. And he's one of the guys that you could tell the UFC and Zuffa were really anxious in bringing over from Strikeforce. He's a pretty well-rounded fighter. He's got a few more knockouts than submissions, but he's got 15 wins in 20 fights. Really been on a good run as of late. He's put together 4 wins in a row. There's a lot of potential there, and a guy like Jimmo, say what you will about the lack of entertainment you get from him, he's going to test a guy who's unproven. And if Ovince St. Preux comes in and he looks good against the Ryan Jimmo, then maybe we're seeing somebody we need to be paying a little bit more attention to in the future.
Robert Winfree, Ryan Jimmo has been wildly inconsistent both in his MFC days, Maximum Fighting Championships, for those that don't know, which was featured on Access TV, formerly HDNet Live. And now here in the UFC, again, wildly inconsistent, either terrible decisions or knockout punches within 30 seconds of the first round. What do you attribute to his inconsistency?
The fact that he sucks.
All right, very good, sir.
Look, he's better than the hippo, whose name I can never remember until someone reminds me of it. Anthony Peroche. I remembered. He's better than Anthony Peroche, and he was better than a cab driver. Congratulations. You're a big, stupid, muscular guy who's going to blow something out sooner rather than later, and I keep waiting for you to fail a drug test.
Speaking of failing a drug test, as we see Ryan Jimmo come out in his Ryan Jimmo Cyborg t-shirt, Robert Winfree, 50 words or less, Chael Sonnen has retired from the sport of MMA because he was taking estrogen blockers, which, as I recall, he thought were legal but weren't legal, and they might have been legal for 5 minutes, but then a window shut and a door closed and a bat flew in, and then they were legal again, and now he's out of a job. What are your thoughts?
If this would ensure that I never had to see, read about, hear from, or listen to Chael Sonnen ever again, I'd be happy. It's not. He's still going to remain a talking head, which he's not bad at, in all fairness to Mr. Sonnen, but I don't care. He's not been a relevant fighter in years. He was never all that good. He had a specific skill set that he knew how to fight towards. His biggest claim to fame is having one of the biggest choke moments in MMA history.
Literally.
Look, that phrase gets overused. When you say choke in a sport like MMA, it doesn't mean the same thing it does in other sports. In the case of Chael Sonnen, he was 2 minutes away from winning the UFC middleweight championship, unseating the pound-for-pound king, hypothetically. And he, for some reason, decided, no, it's okay for this guy to get wrist control and climb up my body with his legs. This can't possibly end badly. Like, it was a mental error, a physical lapse. That's what it means to choke. Kenny Florian only choked once in his fight. That was against Gray Maynard. Every other time, he was just not that good, and there's a difference.
Pat Mullin, do you think Chael Sonnen got a fair shake? He seems to think that there were some inconsistencies regarding the estrogen blockers that he took, but he said, you know what, this is now the second time that I've been busted, and it's just not worth it anymore. I believe Dana White's thing with him was, well, he's about to have a baby, and he wants to focus on that, and furthermore, if you have to take estrogen blockers, you probably don't need to be fighting now anyway. Give me your thoughts on whether or not you feel Chael Sonnen, regarding this most recent bust, got a fair shake from the NSAC as we see Ovince St. Preux come to the ring in this Head Rush t-shirt.
I can't see any reason why people would think that he didn't get a fair shake. He's had a history with performance-enhancing substances. He fought, he's been in MMA a very long time, particularly at a time when the sport was not well regulated, when it came to things like steroid use and hormone use. And a lot of the guys we're seeing busted are from that era where they're using things to compensate for a lack of testosterone production due to steroid abuse. And they're doing it with seemingly very random choices for drugs that are a good laugh for us when they show up in the system. After all the talk about Vanderlei Silva literally running from a drug test, maybe Chael should have taken the same route because he got busted again. And is it still worth it to him to fight at this point? No, it would appear not, because he's not a serious title contender, despite what they promised him. I don't think anybody sees him as such. He's past his best years by a pretty decent margin, and he's going to always be known as one of those almost was but never realized it kind of guys. And if that's the case, he has a career now as a broadcaster that he can live with, and it's gone so far as Dana White saying that if anybody's going to replace him, he'd like to see Chael Sonnen do it, and that's crazy enough to actually happen based on Zuffa's management decisions. And, if Chael's going to walk away at this point, I don't blame him. I don't see a whole lot of reason to continue. He gets paid very well to do what he does outside of the cage. No reason to add concussions to the list for a reason to make a little bit more money.
No reason to leave a job that'll let you stick around despite being a convicted felon either.
As we see Ovince St. Preux getting his final words of wisdom before he enters the cage, let's go over the records here. We've got Flying Ryan Jimmo, who seems to have been on UFC's travel team as they drag him out whenever they're in Canada or England. He has a win over Anthony Perosh. He's lost to James Tahuna. Has a win over Igor Pekrayak. Then he lost to Jim Manawa and came back and defeated Sean O'Connell. A few months ago.
O'Connell took a dive because I needed to leave for the airport.
Correct. Meanwhile, Mr. Ovince St. Preux, he again came over from Strikeforce, lost to Gegard Mousasi, came back with a KO win over T.J. Cook. Since he's been in the UFC, he's 3-0 once again over Jean Vellante, Cody Donovan, and Nikita Koloff with the Russian Sickle. So with a win over Ryan Jimmo. That's 5 in a row. Where do you think, if he does in fact beat Ryan Jimmo, Pat, where do you think that leaves Ovince St. Preux in the light heavyweight division?
I think he's a borderline top 10 guy based on the inconsistencies of the other light heavyweights. This is one of those divisions where the top tier guys, your John Jones, your Daniel Cormier, your Alexander Gustafsson, are the cream of the crop and are so far ahead of the remainder of the top 10 that, kind of 4 through 10 is wide open as far as who can make their mark in the statement. And St. Preux is a guy who, if he wins this fight, is certainly in line for a fight with, I feel, top 10 guys after stringing 5 consecutive wins. Let's get him in there with some names people recognize and give him a shot to make a name for himself.
All right, here we go. We are getting our final announcements here as we begin round 1. And at this time, I want to go ahead and thank Mr. Larry Zonka over at 411mania.com, who's doing the live coverage tonight. He is gracious enough to have placed a YouTube player of our live commentary in his live coverage thread for UFC 174. We want to thank Larry and thank all the good people over at 411mania.com. They do a great job over there. So once again, thank you for supporting us here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
As the only guy on this panel who still contributes to 411, I'll say thank you to you guys as well.
All right, we are just about ready to begin here. Ovince St. Preux looking loose, Ryan Jimmo looking loose. We've got Kevin Dorman as the referee. Round 1 is set to begin. And for some odd reason, the ring girl just gave us spirit fingers. I
could make a joke, but I won't.
And here we go. You see Ryan Jimmo starts off with a front leg kick. Ovince St. Preux content to just paw at him for the time being.
Well, St. Preux fighting southpaw, he ought to be mindful of some of those kicks, and especially, but Jimmo has really solid kicking technique. I don't like the guy all that much, but that's what St. Preux needs to work on. If he's able to get his feel for that kick to the body, it's going to be there all day, and Jimmo is not great at dealing with adversity.
No, and you can see how wide Jimmo's elbows are spread apart from his body. That's going to leave ample room to get those kicks in if he can bait Jimmo, maybe get him distracted with some hand feints up top.
We just saw an exchange between these two men, possibility of a knockout early in this fight, it would seem, as these two are not afraid to exchange punches. Oh! Ovince St. Preux scores one with the left. Ryan Jimmo, now right there, Pat. Why didn't Ovince St. Preux press his advantage when he had the opportunity after he stunned Jimmo with the left?
Jimmo's reputation as a one-punch striker that can take you out. I think St. Preux is a guy who's confident that he can deal with it, but he doesn't want to necessarily get into those close quarters with a guy who's known for one-punch power, particularly early in a fight when Jimmo has a problem with his cardio.
And speaking of
cardio,
that,
he was off balance.
Speaking of cardio, Jimmo's content right now to...
This is vintage Ryan Jimmo, ladies and gentlemen. If he can't punch you in the face and you don't fall over immediately, this is what happens. You clinch up against the fence, and he's going to do a whole lot of just enough to avoid being split up.
He's got left hand underhook right now, and he's got a right hand free in which he's throwing the periodic strike. Just pressing Ovince St. Preux against the cage. As Robert said, he's staying busy enough. Ovince St. Preux turned it around. Now he has the advantage against the cage in the clinch. Now, Ovince St. Preux is a wrestling base from Tennessee, Pat. What do you think Ovince St. Preux should do here in order to gain further advantage on Ryan Jimmo?
Well, to be honest, I don't know if he wants to continue these grappling exchanges where he has a potential to gas himself out a little bit as well with Jimmo's strong, muscular physique. I think he's going to want to keep a little bit of separation early and make Jimmo pursue him, land those body kicks. I know he's got a wrestling base. I think he would be better suited to use a little bit defensively early and not allow Jimmo to lean on him and make him carry his weight. I think Ovince St. Preux is a faster, more explosive guy, and he can use that to his advantage.
All right, we just saw Ryan Jimmo turn him around and then back away. Robert, who do you think has the advantage in the striking department here as they square off again? Do you think Ovince St. Preux is going to sneak in a knockout here, or as we said before, Ryan Jimmo might come back with a counterpunch?
They seem pretty evenly matched. Neither guy has really great technique. If you see, Jimmo has a bad habit of not bringing his hands back into a good defensive position following any sort of attack, or even when he's moving away, if he's trying to avoid being hit, he doesn't keep his hands in a good defensive position. So he could get hit there. OSP's striking technique, he doesn't know how to throw fluid technical combinations, which you can kind of see once he starts throwing more than two at a time. If he tries a flurry, if he thinks he may have tagged you, the follow-up strikes are just, I mean, they're almost ugly from purely a technical standpoint. So it's pretty even, all things considered. Honestly, if they keep fighting like this, I'd more look for one of them to score with some kind of an injury following a bad kick or a funky step, because they just, given their musculatures, that's more likely. There's just so many more things that can go wrong.
Pat, we've got just over a minute left in this round, and what we see both men doing is throwing single strikes one at a time. Is this one of those things that frustrates you in MMA in terms of striking, where they're just throwing one single kick or one single punch and then circling to the right or left?
Yes, because it's not practical to win a fight doing that. One and done is never a good thing unless it's a knockout blow. You see advantages here that each guy can press if you can make a guy bite on one strike. But because each guy is so afraid to commit and they don't have Robert basically called it, these are uncoordinated guys who don't balance well and don't follow up attack well because their balance isn't there. And it's very amateur hour, to say the least.
We just had to see a high kick from Ryan Jimmo, blocked, and Ovince St. Preux charged him like a bull. They're clinched up against the cage again as Ovince St. Preux takes him down. I think this might win the round for Ovince St. Preux, as before they were pretty evenly matched. He just took his back. That's 2 points in mat wrestling. Now we've got less than a minute left. Let's see what Ovince St. Preux can do with Ryan Jimmo on the ground.
Well, in the final, that's a mistake in the final 8 seconds. You're better off trying to just assume some position and actually land something from a grounded position. I mean, if you want an example of what Pat and I were kind of talking about the balance being off and some of these strikes being just not looking great, look at what OSP threw there at the end of that fight. He was way off balance with that left hook. His right hand was at his waist. It was just one of those big windmill punches that has very little chance of landing. And he could have thrown a couple of short, technically sound punches that would have landed and accomplished so much more and conserved so much more energy than he wasted with that punch.
All right, Pat, let's go to you. I'll give you an opportunity here to describe what you saw in the 5 minutes of that round and give us your scorecard.
My scorecard for the round was 10-9, Ovince St. Preux, largely based on the final takedown at the end and a little bit of cage control there. Neither guy had real long success in this round. Nobody was really able to dictate control and press an advantage for a significant amount of time. A lot of single strikes here and there without anything following up significantly. Nobody really badly hurt or stunned. Very, very even round up until the takedown, but not necessarily a good round because of both guys lacking the ability to commit to a further offensive assault because of, as we pointed out, a lack of orthodox balance and technical skills that will hold both of these guys back for as long as they don't do it. You don't want to be, falling down as you're striking more than once consecutively.
All right, and we see them resume their striking battle. Ovince St. Preux just threw a high left kick. Square off again. If you are wanting to interact with us here on Twitter tonight, you can tweet me at Mark Radulich, MarkRadulich. Tell us what you're thinking of the live. Oh, hey, what's going on here, Robert Winfree? What just happened?
I don't know, but it looks like...
Good eye, everybody.
No. That was a pretty decent takedown there from OSP off of a kick. Again, Jimmo off balance. Didn't have his hips in the proper position to defend a potential takedown attempt from OSP there. Smart tactics by him in that he had lulled Jimmo into believing that he was just going to strike with him. He wasn't going to try and necessarily wrestle. And now he's got his back with both hooks in. This is a horrible spot for Ryan Jimmo.
All right, Pat, what do you see here? We've got OSP on Ryan Jimmo's back. Doesn't have his hooks in. Kind of just loosely got his legs leaning against the body there. Mistake, I think, for Ovince St. Preux if he's going to attempt a rear naked choke, which would be the obvious lock to look for. Instead, he should wrap up that body with his legs. Right now, they seem to be fighting for wrist control. Ryan Jimmo trying to defend his way out of a possible rear naked choke.
Was that a question?
It started out, and then it became a statement.
Yeah. No, I think Ovince St. Preux made a mistake here. I think he overcommitted to something he wasn't necessarily in position to go for all the way. And he's giving Jimmo a bit of a breather here to try to regain his positioning. Now he doesn't have both hooks in. Jimmo actually has a leg free.
Oh, okay, I see what happened. Ovince St. Preux was in the ride position, also kind of referred to as the referee's position. If you have the back, but you don't have hooks and you're just kind of off to the side, if you watch a lot of amateur wrestling, that's the position. If one guy starts up and one guy starts down, that's the that's the top position for the as opposed to the downed one. He went for a Kimura. He yanked it really hard. It seems he injured Jimmo's shoulder. He immediately gave the verbal submission. The hold didn't stay on. It was more of a power yank, but it looks like he's done. The fight's been stopped. He's complaining about, again, he hurt him somehow. He broke it.
Ovince St. Preux has just won this match, second round TKO via rip arm off and hit head in the head with it.
That's real jiu-jitsu, folks. That's how you're supposed to do it. That is not McDojo jiu-jitsu.
Now, let's be serious about this for one moment. Is that really jiu-jitsu, or is that some big, strong guy ripping an arm off another human being?
That is jiu-jitsu.
No. Look at what he was doing there. He didn't have the full grip on the arm, which is why he wasn't able to hold it. He didn't have the full double wrist lock. But as to your point, no, this is jiu-jitsu in the sense that we as a society have kind of removed it from the potentially brutal aspects of itself. I mean, jiu-jitsu is, they refer to it as the gentle art, and because a lot of the time in competition you're not allowed, nowadays you're not allowed to hurt your opponent. In fact, if you injure them, you can be disqualified from a tournament. But if you get a hold of an arm or a leg or something, no, you just rip it off. You don't, okay, I've got you, because if you have the mentality of, all right, I've got you in an arm bar, but you're not willing to break it, the other guy will just keep going until he escapes, and then you're left going, wait, but I had you in an arm bar. No, break it off.
What I'm trying to draw attention to is I feel like that was more brute strength and less technique. You can call it what you will. Call it jiu-jitsu, call it a ham sandwich. I don't really care what you label it as. But there is a technique and a way to do something, and then there's just raw brute strength. When I rolled jiu-jitsu, there were plenty of guys that I did some damage to, but I did it because I would pick them up and throw them on the mat, not because I was doing anything that required any sort of technique beyond knowing how to do a suplex.
Well, there's a fair point there. What he uses for this is a version of the Kimura. He goes to the near side instead of the far side, which you don't see a lot in MMA. You see sometime in competition. But he used a Kimura, which, as we all know, is a lot more. You can compensate technical deficiencies with that hold with raw power. And he didn't have the grip properly. He didn't have his own arm class. Again, he didn't have the full double wrist lock. Given his strength, he was able to do it.
Hang on for 1 second. As much as I'm trying to be as professional as I can with this, Tim Tebow's at the pay-per-view. No, he's not. They just showed Tim Tebow.
Inform your wife that Brendan Schaub and Tim Tebow know each other from college football, and in fact, Schaub has been Tebow's bodyguard on occasion, so they're good friends.
And Tebow's got a better chin.
I hurt Tim Tebow.
Well, now you want to watch this fight because apparently Tim Tebow's best friend Brendan Schaub is fighting.
I'll watch this fight.
Okay. Well, I'm rooting for Andrei Arlovsky in our next fight, but before we get to that, Pat, you saw that 5+ minutes of action, which ended in a TKO via arm ripping. How would you grade Ovince St. Preux's performance and ultimate win there?
I give him a C+. I think there wasn't for lack of effort. I think he was in shape, and I think he was trying to make a fight of it to some extent and was going for the finish. But his lack of balance was astounding. That is really a huge problem for him against somebody who knows what they're doing. And it's something that he's going to have to work on diligently with footwork drills. He's going to have to use the ladder drills. And he really has to learn how to put himself in position to punch and or kick and not be ready to fall over or be taken down with ease following that. It's very common with a lot of wrestlers, particularly those who have more of a lanky frame like he does, not the shorter, stockier guys. And as a result, they're a little bit more prone to being taken advantage of in that position. But if he can rectify that, he's got a lot of tools at his disposal that most guys wish they had. That 6'4" height, that 80-inch reach. He can be somebody if he puts the work in.
Robert Winfree, last word on this. We're going to move on to the next heavyweight battle. Of course, a fight that I'm very excited about. But over in St. Preux, again, TKO win. What do you think is up next for this young man in the light heavyweight division of the UFC?
You know, he had a pretty good performance here. As far as his next opponent, if Ryan Bader is able to beat Feijão Cavalcante in a couple of fights, that's a thought. I haven't looked at the rankings in quite a while. There's a lot of guys whose names just run together. But, again, Bader or Feijão would be a good test for him, probably the loser. Just because the winner is inching in on top 5 territory. So probably one of those guys. I'd like to see him against, just for my own personal amusement, I'd like to see him against a guy who has good takedown defense but a really solid striking background. Just let's see if he can shore up some of those, balance issues that he's had, some of those wild strikes that leave him vulnerable to counters. If he's got a guy in there who can avoid the takedown and will be able to exploit those openings. So if I'm forgetting somebody who fits that mold, I'd be more than happy to see. Actually, again, the Thiago Santos fight, not Santos, no, Thiago Santos. That fight would have been a good fight because I think there's some of those same characteristics there.
You mean Thiago Silva?
What? Thiago Silva. No, I want to see him fight Thiago Santos. I don't want him to have children. That's my new thing. If I don't think you should have children, get in there with Thiago Santos.
All right, let me interrupt you here. Let's talk a little bit about the comeback of Andrei Arlovski. He went on a 4-fight losing skid when he was in Affliction and then Strikeforce, losing to Fedor, famously, Brett Rogers, and Bigfoot Silva, and then in the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, Sergey Karatanov. He then went to Pro Elite, got 2 consecutive wins, fought Tim Sylvia, and I believe their 4th fight at One Fighting Champions Pride of a Nation, which ended in a kick to the grounded opponent, as I recall. He went on to have 2 more wins, one against Devin Cole at the World Series of Fighting, and he had a cup of coffee over in Moscow, Russia, against Mike Hayes. Went back to the World Series of Fighting for 2 more matches, one against Fat Anthony Johnson and then Mike Kyle. He split on those 2, losing to Fat Johnson, but winning against Mike Kyle. And finally, at Fight Night, the Battle of Naimia in Belarus, he beat Andreas Kraniotakis. And that has brought him back. 6 wins, broken up by a no contest and a loss since 2011, has brought him back to the UFC's famously shallow heavyweight division against Ultimate Fighter contender and perennial gatekeeper Brendan Schaub. Pat, what do you think of this fight? What do you think is going to happen here? Give me a prediction between Brendan Schaub and a returning Andrei Arlovski. Will we see Andrei Arlovski return to glory, or Brendan Schaub knock out another former legend?
If the air conditioning is strong, they're both going to sleep because all it takes is a stiff breeze to put them out.
No, you're not fair to either man. Robert Winfree.
That's a fair assessment.
It is, but I'm trying to be nice here. Again, Brendan Schaub, we've all famously declared as a glass chin, and Andrei Arlovski is not exactly a spring chicken. Who gets knocked out first?
I'm leaning towards Arlovski taking the big L here. I think Schaub's a smart fighter. He's younger. He's probably stronger, a little bit quicker. If he's smart, now this is a big if, and I don't mean to cast dispersions on the man's intelligence. I'm talking about what he can do in the cage because there's a world of difference. But if he's smart in the cage, he'll get Arlovski down and he'll work his top game because Schaub has a good grappling base. Not great, but Arlovski's grappling is it's not good.
I would like to take this time right now, for those of you following us on Twitter, I want to say thank you. And this is indeed the greatest night in the history of the UFC. Now then, not kidding. Someone just called me Tony Schiavone on Twitter, and I've never been more happy in my entire life.
He asked which one of us was Schiavone, which was Dusty, and which was the brain. Now we all know I can't do Dusty, so it's got to be Pat.
Yeah, well, this is, baby, he's getting into the cage right now. I'm alive, you're alive, we here live in Canada.
I'll be with all these humanoids. This is you know that goofball with the crown. He calls this Bizarro Land. I'll give him credit for this one. He's not completely wrong. So there you go, buddy. I put you over just one time.
Brendan Schaub enters the cage, but which side is he on? Wait, was that Bobby Heenan who did that?
It was, actually. Which is why that whole bit, everybody who complains about that, spoiling the surprise, no. If anyone's going to say Hulk Hogan's full of crap and going to be a bad guy, it's Bobby Heenan.
Yeah, did they miss 1984 through 1995 as a whole?
It's WCW and Eric Bischoff. There's a really good chance they did. Now, Pat, I do want to hear you say he hit him with a bicycle, because I want that to happen.
He hit him with a bicycle.
He got a bicycle.
He got him with a bicycle, Tony.
How did he get that bike? Somebody ride it in here? Oh, Matthew. Botchamania, one of my favorite things.
WCW Saturday Night, folks. Big Bubba, Jim Duggan.
I feel like Andrei Arlovsky coming back to the UFC wearing an Affliction t-shirt is a bad omen.
I feel like Andrei Arlovsky coming back to the UFC is an affliction on the heavyweight division.
Oh, come on. It's heavyweight. No one actually cares.
I care. God damn it.
in all seriousness here, the thing about these two guys, at least Schaub knows that he has a bad chin and he attempts to make himself difficult to hit. Arlovsky, for some reason, thinks that even though he has a bad chin, he can keep his head in the center and nothing bad will happen, and that's why he gets knocked out, because he doesn't make himself difficult to hit. Say what you will about Schaub, he at least understands his physical shortcomings and tries to do something about them. This is the same Andrei Arlovsky as it's been in 2006, 2002, whenever.
Robert, let me ask you a question before you go into your spiel. Quick question. How long has Andrei Arlovsky been training under the tutelage of Greg Jackson?
I believe his first fight under Greg Jackson was when he fought Sergei Karatanov in the heavyweight Grand Prix in Strikeforce. Of note, he actually looked pretty good in that fight until he got knocked out. The problem was he stopped cutting angles, he stopped moving, he stopped circling. He started backing straight up and let his back get put against the cage, and when you've got his chin and Karatanov has the type of power that he does, that only ends one way. Prior to that, Arlovsky was actually doing well. He was cutting angles, he wasn't getting hit that much, he was using some kicks and some jabs. He looked like he might have maybe turned a corner with his career. Like, hey, look, I've added new tools. And then he got punched in the face a few times, and he forgot that and all of his high school career.
Pat, give me 30 seconds here on the following. Brendan Schaub has started to turn some things around in his UFC career by deciding not to go toe-to-toe, fist-to-fist with his opponents, but instead utilize his wrestling. He's taking people down. He's famously wet blanketing them, but he's winning fights with it. If he decides to go that route here with Andrei Arlovsky, what can Andrei Arlovsky do to get himself out of danger and up from under Brendan Schaub?
He's got to stall if he is put down on his back. He has to stall Schaub's movement, get wrist control, maintain position, do everything he can to force a stand-up if he can't use hip escapes or, say, a butterfly guard to push Schaub off of him, which is doubtful because Schaub is not only the naturally bigger man, but a better, more explosive athlete with better reflexes. So Andre's best bet is to stall, try to get a stand-up, reestablish distance, and put himself in a position to let his hands go, because we all know what Schaub's kryptonite is. And if Andre, who does have a good punch, he can strike, and when he does put combinations together, he can put the majority of heavyweights to sleep, including the guy with a weak chin in Schaub. But in order to do that, he's got to do something we haven't seen from him very often recently. He's got to be willing to let those hands go and put combinations together. And if he doesn't do that and he winds up on his back, it's going to be a long night for him if he can't stall, buy time, and get stood up again.
All right. We see John McCarthy take to the center of the cage. He's our referee for this match. Round one is set to begin. Brendan Schaub, Andrei Arlovsky, heavyweight fight at the Rogers Arena in Vancouver, Canada. Here we go.
Come on, you got to do it correctly. Here we go.
I'm not imitating. Except for
No, that's actually how Bud Light wants you to do it.
Oh.
That's not a joke, actually.
Do they also want me to say WNBC?
No, seriously, like the horrible way that Mike Goldberg says, "Here we go," the Bud Light slogan. I heard everyone else do it the exact same way, and not just because they're terrible, like John Anik.
Andrei Arlovsky throws a pair of punches and bull rushes Brendan Schaub, clinching against the fence.
We're in for a long night, folks.
But you knew that coming in.
You say that now, but I expect this fight will end any minute now. Like,
Well, if they crank
now.
up the AC.
Like 14 minutes and 40 seconds from now?
Aw.
No, sorry, that was incorrect. 10 minutes.
Andrei Arlovsky is pressing Brendan Schaub against the cage still. He's looking for an advantage in the clinch. Brendan Schaub seems to have the right arm trapped on Andrei Arlovsky, preventing him from gaining any kind of advantage. And so right now they are at a stalemate, as you would expect in most heavyweight fights that don't end in a 30-second knockout.
Well, they were in the 50-50 position, which is each guy has an underhook and an overhook. They still are, more or less. Schaub trying to use the whizzer on his left, which is Arlovsky's right, to avoid being, maneuvered or thrown. The referee is going to break this up here any second. Nobody's doing anything.
Andrei Arlovsky breaks it up himself and backs away. Schaub hits him with a 1-2 punch. And Andrei Arlovsky is still standing. What a hero. But left kick misses. Brendan Schaub definitely moves out of the way.
I'm amazed that Arlovsky was able to absorb a punch. It wasn't even an especially hard punch. Incidentally, to anyone out there betting live, I can't give out the name of the guy on the air conditioning, but I have bribed him. So he's got to be on those louvers pointing the stiff breeze.
Aw. All right, they appear to lock up again. This fight has gotten more lockups than your average pro wrestling match.
And sadly, they make just about as much sense.
We have 2 knees to the thigh from Arlovsky, a third.
All right, Pat, bring some life to this. What's going on here, and what does Schaub have to do to not just be clinched and standing blanketed?
They appear to be cuddling.
He's being too reactive to what Andrei's doing and allowing Andrei to take the lead in the center of the cage. One of the things you can tell about Arlovsky is he's not from a traditional wrestling background. He's got a sambo background. But when they're clinching, he's not grinding the top of his head into Schaub's face, which is something that can really frustrate a guy, throw him off, and allow an opening for you to develop because you're blinding them and frustrating them at the same time. Schaub is just too content at this point to try to hang on, wait for things to happen when he's got the physical ability to make them happen against Arlovsky. But that's the problem with his mindset. He's being reactive instead of proactive and very passive in these exchanges. But there's also the indication that maybe Arlovsky knows something from training with the Jackson camp, which Schaub at a time was a part of. Maybe he knows something about Schaub that Schaub doesn't want us to know.
Well, one thing, Pat, I think you should be happy with, at least minimally, is that Schaub is at least throwing combinations. He's throwing 2 and 3 punches at a time instead of one single one, which gets you absolutely nowhere in MMA unless you happen to hit right in the temple or in the nose.
He is, but the thing about them is they've been arm punches so far. He hasn't set his feet when he's done it. He's been leaping a bit, throwing more with his arms than with setting his feet and turning his hips over and channeling that power through his hands. So right now, I'm not amazed that Andrei's still standing from those. Maybe a little I am, but they're
We're
not
all a little surprised.
They're not real great solid punches, and so he's going to continue to be able to stand through them more than likely if Schaub does not sit down on it, as Uncle Roger would say.
Andrei Arlovsky attempted a takedown there via trip. Brendan Schaub stepped right out of it. They clinch up again. Here we go. 3rd clinch of the night.
Ugh. These punches are awful. Look, here's the thing, everybody out there listening. If you're striking in close, not necessarily clinched up, but in close striking distance, you have to turn your wrist over. You have to keep your punches tight. A lot of your power comes from the shoulder in this case and what you're able to generate by pushing off the ground with your legs. You can't wing it from your arm like most MMA fighters seem to do. You won't hit anything.
And like
Your
Brendan
fist-
Schaub attempted to just do.
Your fist doesn't make contact. You wind up glancing them with the forearm. It's a major technical flaw that a lot of guys have. And the guys who know what they're doing, who are able to counter that, they have a lot of success in close.
All right, Pat, the round has ended. Andrei Arlovsky attempted some sort of back kick there that completely missed. They had one final exchange and the round was over. Give me your analysis and scorecard.
I mean, really nothing of note significant in this round other than Arlovsky taking the lead somewhat, neither guy landing anything real effective one way or the other. if you're scoring it, you have to base it on, at this point, octagon control, which went to Arlovsky, who had the fight more where he wanted it. Aggression, which, it wasn't effective aggression, but Arlovsky did seem to be the aggressor, and Schaub just didn't look interested in trying to press the fight or do anything to fight off Arlovsky. So I've got it 10-9 Andre and 0-0 for all of us.
Robert Winfree, in a fair world where 10-10s are given out a little bit more often, would you call that a 10-10 round?
I'd call that a 9-9 because I don't think either man actually won it. But the point remains, I believe the round was a draw. Also, shame on Greg Jackson for not using his Russian accent in the corner.
I would say that's racism.
How is that racist?
That's racist.
How?
The other guy he did it for, he likes better than the Belarusian.
This is his subtle support of Putin.
That's right.
I imagine Lana and Rusev will announce their move to Greg Jackson's camp in the near future.
Have we just had our first nut shot of the pay-per-view? Yes, we have.
Oh, because we just have to have those.
Because this fight needs to go longer.
I'd like to get a replay on that for those of you in the UFC truck. Can we get a replay? It didn't look like he hit him that hard at all. Thank you.
No, he got him there. Andre was throwing an inside leg kick. He took a step in. Schaub moved off to the side. The shin went straight into the cup.
Okay, yep. On the replay, I did see it. He looked like he split the uprights. 1 point.
1 point deduction, if only?
No, 1 point for the extra kick.
All right, Schaub doesn't seem to have taken too much time. We're back in action. Yay for Mr. Schaub. Did he change his nickname to the Big Brown? Can we get confirmation on this?
As in what you leave in the toilet after a Mexican dinner? I believe that.
Third time. Looks like he tried to fake a takedown there, came up with the left hand. Arlovsky moved out of the way, and Arlovsky's moving in on him. Oh, he tagged Schaub in the chin, and he's still standing, mostly because Arlovsky is holding him up against the cage for the fourth time.
It was a good left uppercut. Well, it wasn't really an uppercut. It was more of a rising punch, and there's a slight difference. Got a good reaction out of Schaub's head, but I don't know if he hit him that solidly. But, this is another thing that a lot of MMA guys do. They wind up stuffing their own punches. They throw a few punches, they get in too close, they wind up in this scenario instead of trying to maintain striking distance. Unless you're like one of these two guys and you're terrified of being hit flush, in which case you use it only to get in this close.
We talked about this at the top of the fight, Pat. We thought Brendan Schaub would do exactly what he did in a previous fight, which is just takedown after takedown after takedown. But we're not seeing much of that. Why do you think that is?
I'd love to be able to tell you off the bat that it's, Arlovsky's intimidating him and making him feel inadequate, that he can't do it. He puts some stuff into Schaub's mind as they're fighting, but it just seems like Schaub isn't interested in fighting. I can't tell you if he's choking, if he's caught up in the moment, if it's Tim Tebow's making him nervous because of where their particular careers have gone at this point. But he's just way too passive. I think he's relying on catching Andre coming in with one big counter shot because of the reputation of Andre's chin. And relying on one strike is never a foolproof strategy, as he lands there a little bit. But Schaub is not a tremendous puncher. And no matter how bad a guy's chin is, if you're not a tremendous puncher, it's never a guarantee you're going to knock him out. And it seems like Schaub is just waiting on one perfect strike opportunity rather than creating it.
All right, and for some expert analysis on Tim Tebow's contribution to this fight, here's my wife and former Gator, Melissa Radulich. Melissa, how do you think Tim Tebow is affecting Brendan Schaub's performance?
I don't know. I'd be flustered around him, too.
Why would you be flustered around Tim Tebow? Is that because he gives you the vapors?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Does he, in fact, give you the vapors?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, what?
Oh, yes. He gives me the vapors.
There we go. Thank you very much for that brilliant analysis, ma'am.
You're welcome.
This is why they don't allow girls in sports. Let's continue.
It's gonna rain.
Oh, Christ, we finally got a takedown. And
wow. They spent that long working for it, and that's what we get.
45 seconds left in the second round, and had that been football, that would have been effective.
Here's the thing about Schaub. He actually does better trying to take guys down when he has the football mentality of I'm going to tackle you. When he tries to wrestle, like do technical wrestling stuff, he doesn't do very well. He doesn't have the experience to grab the correct leg, to drive through with it necessarily. His feet under him are not as quick as they need to be. He's better off just trying to throw his body weight at somebody more often than not than trying to execute a technical wrestling takedown.
Well, maybe he doesn't want to hurt his knees.
They're probably already shot. I mean, football is like the worst thing you can do for your knees anyway.
Have you ever actually done a takedown in wrestling, like a proper one? You destroy your knees doing that. If your knees are already shot, I'm sure it's got to hurt more.
Oh yeah, it is a wear and tear on them. I'm just saying that, football is, medically speaking, like the worst thing you can do for your knees this side of skiing or snowboarding.
So I think we should forgive Brendan Schaub for shitty takedowns, since
I'm not saying he should. I'm saying he should adjust his technique. If he can't do it, if his knees are bothering him, so getting down there like that is too painful, he reacts too slowly, he doesn't have the drive in his legs, start spearing guys.
Or
That's what you should do. Good uppercut there from Schaub. It got Arlovsky's head. Seems to
and I want to point out that Arlovsky has stayed upright. Arlovsky hasn't, and any time that Arlovsky's been hit in what's almost been 10 minutes of fighting, he hasn't gone flailing to the ground. He hasn't lost consciousness. He stayed on his feet. Arlovsky is a god among men, and this is the greatest night in the history of the UFC. Thank you, Andrei Arlovsky, for bringing legitimacy back to the UFC.
I am going to have to excuse myself to vomit for a moment.
Remember Donovan, how much does this guy weigh?
How much does this guy weigh? They announced it at the start.
I like this guy, Razor.
Remember at the top of the broadcast when I said I was taking this seriously?
No.
We're taking this seriously. We can goof around a little bit too. Look, we don't make ridiculous gay jokes or endorse we don't complain about eye pokes incessantly. We don't shill steel tie cups or compression MMA, diamond MMA.
I'm telling you what's happening, but we're trying to keep you awake at the same time and not lie to you folks. That's basically what we're getting at.
And speaking of gay jokes and keeping you awake, this podcast has been sponsored by Cayman Jack Margaritas, 100% blue agave nectar. For those of you who don't want to drink beer but have to drink something during a UFC fight, Cayman Jack Margaritas. They taste delicious.
Can we score that round for Tim Tebow?
Let me consult.
I'd like to score that round for Leonard Garcia.
All right, can we score that round 10-9 Tim Tebow?
Yeah.
She agrees.
I was going to give it 30-27 to Diego Sanchez.
That's relevant because
I hate him so much.
I'm going to score that round for Brendan Schaub based on landing the only thing that looked like an effective strike.
All right, so we've got one round to Arlovsky and one round for Schaub. This here is the rubber round. Whoever wins this round wins the fight, unless they can actually finish it.
And neither man is sponsored by CondomDepot.com. Ironic since it's the rubber round.
So we're only 2 fights in. We're already getting punny.
We need to for this fight. Look, if we had great action on screen, we'd be focused on that. Instead, we've got this.
Look at how high Arlovsky is holding his chin with his hands that low to Schaub, and Schaub is doing nothing with it. That is a guy who doesn't want to fight.
What the hell just happened there? The ref stopped the fight and admonished Schaub for something.
We got a headbutt.
Ah.
Accidental clash of heads. The referee paused it and warned both of them.
That might be the most action we've seen in the entire fight.
Part of me wishes he was warning them both for timidity.
I think Schaub is noses, and we finally have another takedown that actually sticks. Schaub is in full guard. Andrei Arlovsky attempts to control the body. They are right in the middle of the Bud Light.
Look, Schaub had so many opportunities to end this fight standing. This is actually probably his best opportunity because Arlovsky's guard work is not good. He's not very good off of his back. He's not even that good from top position, all things considered.
Well, he's certainly not showing a whole lot of effort right now. He's trying to ward off Brendan Schaub, who's attacked the most in guard this entire fight than he did the entire time he was on his feet. He's attacking with fists. He's attacking with elbows, rights and lefts. Provided Andrei Arlovsky doesn't have a turnaround or finish the fight, this is Schaub's fight to lose at this point.
Yeah, but the question is if he's going to be able to maintain this work rate at this point in time. Schaub is working diligently, and I like the fact that he's only loading up once every so often to throw a big strike. Otherwise, it's a lot of little busy punches and elbows that aren't necessarily going to hurt you or inflict a lot of damage. But if he's working this way, McCarthy's not going to have a great case to stand them up. And The fight's his to be won here because he's done really nothing effectively while standing up, as Roberts pointed out.
Andrei Arlovski appears to be stuck on the bottom with Brendan Schaub beating him about the face and body in full guard. Robin Winfree, what does Andrei Arlovski have to do to turn his fortunes around before he ends up losing his re-debut here in the UFC?
Well, he has two lines of attack here. Well, I say attack; they're actually defense. One, because he has the closed guard. If he wraps up an arm and if he wraps up one arm and gets his other arm around the head and links his hands together, you can lock a guy down from that position. They have a very hard time getting free, doing anything that would encourage the referee not to stand you up. That lockdown position is probably your best opportunity to get stood up. If he wants to not get punched in the face anymore, the problem with your closed guard is you're either trying to set up an explosive attack on the arms or you're just hanging out hoping to be stood up. He needs to get butterfly guard, which would be relatively easy to do, open it up, get his feet on the hips, and try to push Schaub off. As it stands, I believe Arlovski just thinks he won the other two rounds and is content to take a beating here as long as he doesn't get finished and believe he has the split decision win.
So he's using the Brian Caraway method of coasting to victory.
That would be correct, sir.
Indeed. I don't know how he thought he won that second round.
I don't know how he landed Miesha Tate, but I don't question these things. The universe is mysterious, and we're not meant to understand it all.
I don't know what horrible thing you would do to have to be stuck with Miesha Tate, but at this point I think you just deserve it. And there we go. Push yourself off, finally. He could have done that quite a while ago and saved us all a bunch of time and given himself a better opportunity to win the fight.
If you want to follow us on Twitter, here on our Radulich and Broadcasting Live alternative commentary for UFC 174, Demetrius Johnson versus Ali Bag of Donuts for the world title. You can follow me on Twitter at Mark Radulich, MarkRadulich. If you say something funny to me on Twitter, I'll read it live, like now. Kane Mura 90 says, watching Arlovski is like watching Jerry Flynn in WCW. I come in with expectations and leave fairly disappointed and empty. Well done, sir.
Could also be Rob Van Dam post-1999.
All right, we've got 15 seconds left, and the guys are just throwing haymakers at this point.
Yeah, none of which are landing.
Well, they can hope.
All right, Brendan Schaub. I think Brendan Schaub wins just by continuing to punch until the bell actually rung. Though Brendan Schaub looks to be in worse shape than Andrei Arlovski. Andrei Arlovski's got a bit of a scratch by the nose. Brendan Schaub looks like he was just in a car accident. Not a bad one, a minimal car accident. Kind of a fender bender, rear-ending kind of a job. His face smacked against the steering wheel a little bit. Didn't quite go through the glass.
That weren't even going fast enough to deploy the nose was from the headbutt. Where some of the swelling is coming from. That actually started from the accidental headbutt. The blow to the eye was a legitimate Arlovski punch towards the end there.
I think Brendan Schaub wins and we all lose.
It just goes to say, I have to say this. We don't have Ben Askren. We can't have John Fitch, Yushin Okami, or Jake Shields. But boy howdy, we sure did need Andrei Arlovski back in 2014.
Robert, continuing with you for just a moment, do you think Dana White and the UFC hang on to Arlovski even though he lost his fight here and didn't put on a hot performance? You think they keep him just to have the name in the heavyweight division?
We assume he lost the fight. Let's not rule out Clucky. He might actually get the judge's decision because, hey, MMA judging. I don't know what his contract is. I imagine they're probably paying a fair amount to have Andrei Arlovski, in which case you have to give him at least one more. But, part of me thinks they hired Arlovski back just to keep Bellator from getting him. Not that anyone wants to see Czech Congo and Andrei Arlovski.
Yeah, that ought to put butts in the seats.
This card needed some names, some star power on it, and I think that was also part of the reason why they brought him back. At this point they just need names people are familiar with, regardless of their performance or even drawing power.
Let's bring back Tank Abbott.
I recognize that guy. And here we go to the judges' scorecard for the night. Let's see how they did here.
This has split decision written all over it. Given MMA judging, not that it was actually a close fight.
So here's a fun thing about doing alternative commentary. I have my television on mute. Hey! There we go. Andrei Arlovski wins.
That's just sad.
Can I just say...
Okay, yep, he won by split decision. Let's go to our judge here as to how he scored it and why. Sir, what did you think of the fight, and why did you score it the way you did? Very, very good, sir. He says he scored it 29-28 Arlovsky.
Oh, Clucky. Horrible MMA judging rears its head again.
The face on Shaw was priceless. I mean, it's a shame he lost on the judges' scorecard. He lost the fight. In all seriousness, just because this has been a bit of a mess here, Pat, the first round to Arlovsky, last 2 rounds to Shaw, right?
Correct.
Robert Winfree, same thing?
I scored it that way. I will say this, the second round was so boring and full of non-action, you probably could have given it to Arlovsky just because who cares?
All right, I had it the same. First round to Arlovsky, second 2 rounds to Shaw, so it would only make sense that Andrei Arlovsky would win by split decision, thus nullifying our discussion of what to do with him now that he's lost the fight.
And the 5th judging scoring criteria that we forgot to mention at the top of the show, apathy.
So what next for Arlovsky, Robert Winfree? There's heavyweights to fight.
Tim Sylvia 5.
Why? Who are you interrogating that you wish to have them watch this so they will talk?
I think they need to. Are they 11 wins? He's tied with Gabriel Gonzaga, Czech Congo, and Cain Velasquez. I demand Cain Velasquez versus Andrei Arlovsky if Fabricio Verdum can't make it to Mexico.
What goes first, Cain's shoulder or Andre's chin when Cain's fist meets Andre's chin?
That's a very good question, Pat, because as we all know, Cain Velasquez can only defend the title once a year.
As for what you do with him, I don't know if there's rumors and rumblings about Stefan Struve coming back. I mean,
he's already been matched up with somebody.
How about they have him fight Tank Abbott?
I would love to see Tank Abbott back in the UFC.
Now, Stipe Miocic could use another fight. I mean, he can't. I mean, one former UFC heavyweight champion is as good as the next, right? So Arlovsky and Dos Santos are equal.
Okay, Stefan Struve is fighting next month. Matt Mitrione at UFC 175 on July 5th.
Okay, winner of that fight's Arlovsky. And no one
Oleg
cares.
Taktarov or bust.
All right. Coming up next, we have Fejal Cavalcante coming out of Strikeforce versus Ryan Darth Bader. Ryan Bader's had a colorful UFC career up to this point. He's been trading wins and losses. Let's go all the way back here to... We won't count the John Jones one, but he had a shocking loss against Tito Ortiz. Came back with 2 nondescript wins against Jason Brills and Quinton Jackson. A hilarious loss to Lyoto Machida as he decided to go running and screaming at him head first. Came back with a lackluster win against, a quick win, submission of the night against the janitor, Vladimir Matyushenko. Lost to Glover Teixeira, who went on to do bigger and better things with John Jones, and most recently won a decision last December in Australia versus Anthony Peroche.
Oh, that fight sucked.
Yes, it did. He's fighting Fejal Cavalcante, former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion, after he won it from King Mo.
King Mo's first professional loss, when it meant something, before we all realized, no, you suck.
He then lost to Dan Henderson when Dan Henderson knocked his head off.
Lest we forget the influence of testosterone replacement therapy.
He had a win over Yoel Romero in Strikeforce, and he fought Mike Kyle, but unfortunately Fejal failed the drug test. He came back, lost to Thiago Silva at Big Nog versus Verdum back in June of 2013 while I was in North Carolina with my family. And most recently, he had a win over Igor Pokajak at UFC Fight Night, Belfort versus Henderson in Brazil. Round 1, TKO, minute and 18 seconds. Robert Winfree, what do you make of this? Ryan Bader versus Fejal. Winner goes on to do what exactly?
Keep their job.
Fantastic. What can we expect out of this fight, Pat?
This fight has the potential to be either really great or it's going to be terrible. There's going to be no middle ground here. You have two guys who have the potential to either charge out like raging bulls and throw haymakers at each other, or it could wind up looking a lot like the last fight where neither guy wants to commit to anything, and the only thing they will commit to is the clinch. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case. Rafael Fejao Cavalcante has a little bit of a rep of being an animal. He wants to go right at you and take the fight to you. Bader has shown a willingness to trade even when it's not in his best interests. He's best suited to taking guys down, working the clinch, working them over from top position because of his wrestling and implementing his strength and control. But he can be drawn into a brawl, and he does hit hard, but he doesn't have technical skills, and he doesn't have a great chin. Feijao not the most technical guy, but he stays busy when he's striking, and that can always beat out the guy who's throwing those looping hooks one at a time. So if this thing breaks down into a fracas, I like Feijao. If Bader is able to control things and be smart and utilize his wrestling, I think he could pound him out from top, or if he plays it safe to torture us, win a unanimous decision.
The secret to Ryan Bader's success against strikers like Rampage Jackson not that long ago was that he utilized his wrestling and made that the main focus of his attack. If he does that in this fight, what can Fejao do to defend himself against Bader and pull a win out of this match?
Fejao has good grappling skills. He's got a great guillotine choke that when he locks it in, he's got big muscular arms that he can just crank, and make somebody tap very quickly. So he's not unskilled on the ground by any means. He does have a legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he can use it. He doesn't have a lot of wins by submission on his ledger. I don't think he's had one in several years. But because he can threaten well with it, it usually leads to him getting out of these bad positions because guys don't want to commit to something and get caught by him, so they're willing to give up top position and allow him to get back to his feet, or reverse the positioning because he's able to explode and turn them over. With Bader's a guy who's been put into submissions and is a little bit gun-shy because of it when he gets put into a bad situation. We can all think back to his Vietnam flashback whenever somebody goes for a guillotine against him because of Tito. Because who gets finished by Tito Ortiz in 2011? Nobody. Ryan Bader managed to find a way to do that. No coincidence, right after John Jones had guillotined him successfully. So there's a little bit of a trepidation there for Bader when somebody's threatening him with submissions to commit to something. He usually will give up the position willingly. If Fejao can manipulate him into doing that, that's his best bet to avoid this being Bader on top pounding away or just controlling him.
I want to take this time again, once again, thank 411 Mania and Larry Zonka especially for putting our live commentary in the live coverage thread over at 411mania.com/MMA, their live coverage thread of UFC 174, Demetrius Johnson versus Ali Bag of Donuts. Great guys over there, great site to read. Really appreciate their support of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Speaking of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, we've got great podcasts for you to listen to. We've got The Long Road to Ruin, currently being hosted by one of our commentators tonight, the Authority on Evil, Mr. Robert Winfree. They're wrapping up the Nightmare on Elm Street series this Tuesday night, and that is his last shot as host, as I will be making my return 2 weeks from Tuesday, talking Transformers with the one and only inimitable Sean Comer, who co-hosts on The Long Road to Ruin and is also now hosting his own podcast as he and I are reviewing the entire series of Orange is the New Black. We'll have a new podcast out this Wednesday night at 9 o'clock. We'll be reviewing episodes 4, 5, and 6, so look for that. If you're enjoying this live commentary, and I know you are because we are awesome, you can hear myself, Patrick Mullin, and Robert Winfree talk summer movie blockbusters. We've got a review of Maleficent for you chicks out there. We've got X-Men Days of Future Past, and Pat and I had a raucous debate over The Amazing Spider-Man 2. This week, if we can fit it into our busy schedules, Robert Winfree and Jason Teasley and I will be talking How to Train Your Dragon 2. So go ahead and look for that. If you like Patrick Mullin and his analysis and you want to hear him talking about fighting just a little bit more, you can go ahead and check him out with Gavin Napier over at thecasualheroes.com or .net, whichever you like. They've got a podcast called championship rounds. It's fantastic. They talk boxing. They don't do much kickboxing, unfortunately, and that makes me a sad panda. But they do talk professional boxing and lots of it. It's a great podcast. You should give it a listen. While you're over at casualheroes.net, you can also check out the WrestleCast, as myself, Gavin Napier, and Jed and Chris Evans talk This Week in Wrestling and all other picture postcards. Lots of stuff we talk about not having to do with wrestling, but it's there. I promise you it's there. If music's your bag, you can check out the Metal Hammer of Doom with Robert Cooper. He recently just had Robert Winfree on to talk Sabaton and military history. Lots of it. Robert Winfree will be starting a new page called This Week in Military History. No, I'm just kidding. Robert Winfree, the newest sponsor, the newest sponsor of the NRA. I screwed that joke up. Sorry, everyone.
You did, and I am actually a member, so I don't find your humor all that funny. God
damn it. All right, speaking of humorous, we're about ready to get started here at Ryan Bader versus Rafael Feijão Cavalcante. Evenly matched up. Ryan Bader is 6'2", Feijão 6'1".
Would you say it's virtually identical?
Give or take. Give or take.
I'm most concerned about that half-pound weight advantage that Bader has.
I'm most concerned about that stupid mohawk.
But, I was going to say this before. When they showed the graphic for Ryan Bader and Feijão, could they have found an older-looking picture of Feijão? It looked like he was 80 years old. It's like gray hair. I mean, you couldn't, it just seemingly made him older than he looks in the fight right now, which is weird.
Those pictures are not very good most of the time.
What is up with Ryan Bader's hair?
He's trying to appear attractive to Clucky.
You ever see There's Something About Mary? Let's just leave it at that.
It's like weird. He's got kind of like a hipster faux hawk going on.
It's the rooster faux hawk, and he has it so that Clucky will think he's a chicken and automatically score the fight for him.
Either that or he's realized he's the Terry Taylor of MMA where he'll have a job and never go anywhere.
All right. Eve Levine, our referee for the night, as we begin round one. Please, Ryan Bader, do your thing and run across the ring screaming.
Let's go, Feijão.
I want a plane to crash into the arena right about now.
Wishing death on people is never good. What did the people of Vancouver ever do to you?
Okay, I want a drone, an unmanned drone, to crash through the roof into the middle of the octagon, no one to get hurt, but the event be canceled.
So you basically want Fan Man Part 2?
All right, high kick by Ryan Bader as Feijão ducks under it. He follows up with a 1-2, doesn't do much of anything. That he being Ryan Bader.
And there's a lot of feeling out going on right now. Both guys trying to get the range and timing down, seeing what the other one's planning to offer them in the way of offense.
I can't help but notice that Bader seems huge compared to Feijão physically. I know we looked at the stats and everything on the tail of the tape, but physically, Bader's upper body is massive compared to Feijão.
If Bader put some discipline in there, he could probably make 185.
But he's sponsored by Monster Milk. See?
I said discipline, not if he wants to get paid.
All right, Ryan Bader started off the round with a takedown. He just put Feijão back down again. He's currently riding his back against the cage. Feijão is back on his feet. Got one hand on the mat preventing any kind of knee lifts to the face, which I think is gay, by the way.
It's one of those rules that needs to be, if not changed, at least re-examined.
All right, and Carl Osterlund is playing the home game, joining us here on Twitter. We really greatly appreciate his patronage. He says Bader has the hairstyle of Fabio Maldonado would have had if his hairline wasn't a genetic wasteland. Fair play to you, sir.
Oh, Fabio Maldonado. Accept baldness already, sir. You're not impressing anyone with the comb over.
And unfortunately, this is suitably terrible at the moment.
Bader is working the knee to the thigh.
Look, Feijão is way too complacent here. I mean, I understand he can't do a whole lot defensively. He's not doing much of anything. He'd be better off trying to get his upper body back up and try to fight for underhooks. Maybe try to pummel under Bader's grip. I think he seems content trying to hope Bader gasses out his arms holding him here, and we'll just reset in round 2. It's a bad strategy. Okay, there we go. That's the kind of thing you needed to do, a minute and a half ago to avoid 90 seconds of being held against the fence.
This was starting to look far too much like an episode of Lockup where two men are in a cage and one is thoroughly dominating the other from a rear position.
Prison humor here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network.
Bader almost landed with that right hand. Feijiao's counter was slow and way off target, but some decent movement coming out of Bader as far as this fight goes. Ugly hooks, but his footwork doesn't seem as bad as it has been in the past. He actually is moving around with angles instead of in straight lines, so I'll give him some credit there. Sadly, it's not leading to anything, but
I will
shooting and jiving, trying to find his way in. Pat, what you think of that little movement there? Trying to maybe goad Bader into dropping his hand so he can land a power right?
It's kind of wasted because Bader drops his hands anyway when he stands and looks to feint. He drops his hands and moves his head away from his hands. Just as soon as you see him do that, punch, kick, do something. And when Bader punches, he puts his chin up in the air. It's really simple stuff that Feijiao just doesn't seem to want to commit to.
Now, in fairness to Feijiao, his gas tank sucks without steroids. He's probably already sucking a hefty amount of wind.
Yeah, you shouldn't muffin top out of your fight shorts, but Feijiao's accomplished that tonight.
Big takedown from Bader there. That's
Would you say, Pat, that Feijiao's muffin top is not exactly all that?
I will say to him what I say to girls I see at the gym. Just because you're wearing pants that say juicy and you're pear-shaped does not mean you are, in fact, juicy.
I will defend that. There's more than enough liquid inside those particular frames.
Yeah, that liquid's usually tequila.
And this alternative commentary is sinking fast. All right, folks, Bader is out striking significant strikes according to the stats here in UFC. 17 to something. It flew off before I finished reading it.
3.
Okay,
Look, Feijiao can't seem to pull the trigger, and we're in for this is going to happen to him a lot, and hopefully the referee will stop this fight if for no other reason because we, the viewing audience, are going to be horrifyingly bored out of our minds if this continues. Feijiao doesn't want to be in there anymore. You can tell by his lack of movement, his body posture. He doesn't want to fight anymore. He doesn't really want to be in there. He's just riding out the round. He's going to try and land a big haymaker to start round 2. And when that fails, he's going to get taken down. He's going to get ridden on, and I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't come out for round 3.
I will give Bader credit that the area he's attacking for the most part recently was the rib cage and the gas tank of Feijiao because he knows that the area is there to be worked over. So why not take advantage of it when the guy already has suspect cardio? A rare showing of intelligence from Ryan Bader, folks.
Yeah, I could bury Bader and mention that, well, that was the only area he was legally allowed to hit at that point, so it was more by necessity than by intelligent design. But I'm not going to. Good round for Bader on the whole. I mean, he didn't get knocked out. I was hoping he would because I don't like Ryan Bader. But, good round. He used his wrestling properly. Had a pretty good flurry going at the end of the round there, including that big knee to the body that really kind of got Feijiao's attention. So, Pat, is the rooster-like haircut influencing Clucky, or is Bader winning on his own?
Thus far, he's winning on his own. I don't think there's any question he won round 1. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a 10-8 because I didn't feel that Feijiao was particularly hurt or in trouble at any point in time. But clearly a 10-9 dominant round for Ryan Bader, with or without Terry Taylor's hairstylist in his corner.
Feijiao had nothing for Bader's takedown there, Pat. In this modern age of ours where wrestlers are dominating in the UFC, what do you say to a guy who comes in and can't defend a takedown?
Stick to anything but MMA, because if you can't defend a takedown, this ain't for you. The rules themselves are structured to favor guys with wrestling bases, particularly at takedown attempts and control. You're in the wrong medium at that point. Go to Glory, where seemingly anyone can fight and win.
Well, not Pat Barry.
To be fair to Pat Barry, he didn't even attempt a takedown in that fight, which clearly would have scored him some points.
All right, Ryan Bader has Feijiao clinched against the fence there. You guys mentioned in the previous round that it just looks like Feijiao doesn't want to be in there anymore, and I would tend to agree. I feel like he's much too relaxed, he's much too complacent. He's not showing any kind of emotion in there. Which I guess you don't really
Does he
want.
not realize that he could be cut following this loss? I don't. I think so many fighters don't realize that if you lose and lose badly, the UFC can just cut you, and they can find someone else to replace you.
Yeah, but cabbies are unionized.
They'd leave that cab union for the fight, for the non-union of fighting.
All right, Ryan Bader gets a single leg takedown once more. He's operating from full guard against the fence. And, Fejao, with his experience in grappling, really needs to take advantage of his opportunity here. Just because you're on your back doesn't mean you're out of options. I can't see Ryan Bader's submission defense being all that great. Instead, he's flipping over to his belly. He's on one knee, and Bader's now attacking him again with knees to the torso.
I'll defend Fejao just a little bit here. With his head against the fence like that, he couldn't have moved his hips properly to maybe attack with something. He had to at least reposition himself.
He could have butt crawled.
I'm not saying what he did was the best way to do it. Look, here's the other thing. I mentioned this with Arlovsky. If you see a guy who just closes his guard, that's a sign of a defeated or a resigned opponent. He's not trying to do anything offensive in mixed martial arts. You can in traditional Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You can do plenty of things from the closed guard, depending on the rules of a grappling tournament. Closed guard is a superior position to being on top in someone's guard. But in MMA, it's just not the case. If you're closing the guard, you're looking to be stood back up, or you're just holding on trying to regain your breath.
They're back on their feet again as Ryan Bader is still looking, as sharp as Ryan Bader can look. Still seems to have a lot of vim in his step. Fejao just looks like a zombie in there. Blocked 2 punches and casually walked backwards.
So I played a great game of golf the other day.
Speaking of golf, significant strike landed. We've got 26 for Bader and 8 for Fejao. If
Fejao doesn't win this fight, he's getting cut.
What strikes are they counting?
It's 5, first of all.
Ryan Bader shoots again for a takedown. Fejao brushes him off against the cage.
It's a lack of commitment by Bader because Fejao's hips were way out of position there. Bader just didn't want to put forth the energy to turn an angle.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that the fight sucks.
Pat's calling it like he sees it, folks. If a fight's, we don't work for the UFC. That's the benefit of the Radulich and Broadcasting alternative commentary. Is that you're not going to get 3 guys shilling a product that is shilling a fight that is simply no good. You're going to get honest commentary about what's happening in the cage, a little bit of laughter here and there, but ultimately 3 honest opinions on what's actually on the screen instead of people living in La La Land because of who signs their checks.
Ryan Bader's breathing a little bit heavy now too,
especially considering he hasn't done a whole heck of a lot effectively.
He's posturing and preening while standing and throwing poor jabs where he sticks his chin up in the air and follows by bringing his hand back down to his waist, inviting a right hand over the top to counter. He's just very fortunate Fejao doesn't seem to want to do anything, although he was a little bit short with one right hand, and Bader proceeded to legitimately run away from it.
But he rolled his shoulders a lot, Pat. Did you see him rolling his shoulders? He was rolling his shoulders.
Yeah, I rolled my eyes at that when he rolled his shoulders, so what does that tell you?
I think we can safely say Ryan Bader has won 2 rounds, 10-9.
Yeah, sure.
Tebow.
Are you scoring another round for Tim Tebow?
I think I have no choice.
Yeah, my wife's sleeping. I can't go do that gag again.
No, it was. Look, the reality of the circumstances, Fejao's about to lose his job.
What do you think they're saying to him in the corner right now, Robert? Fejao's sitting there, they're icing him down, they're checking on him.
I don't think it matters. He doesn't look like he's listening.
What do you think?
It sounds a lot like this.
No, I'm glad that you're able to denigrate an entire language like that. Look, they were telling him they were probably telling him he's got to finish the fight. It's important. this is your time. You're not tired. He's going to try and take you down. You've got to stand and fight. I imagine there would be a liberal amount of profanity strewn around in there because that's what cornering in the sport of MMA is.
Yeah, I would promise him a dinner at the Waffle House if he wins.
Yeah, I'd take you up on that. I'd do a run-in right now if you take me to Waffle House.
Oh boy.
I'd introduce you to the waitress, too. Some people call it fight a slobber knocker. I call the waitresses at the Waffle House slobber knockers.
I suppose that's moderately amusing. Well, Feijiao stuffed a couple of takedowns there. Good for him. Wow, geez, where was this guy the other 2 rounds who was, sprawling and doing stuff?
Well, in fairness, Ryan Bader wasn't sucking wind hard.
Yeah, he was sucking something. And yeah, lots of dead air because my jokes just invoke cricket responses.
You're doing just fine, Robert.
So that was apropos.
And then he just let him get...
Yeah.
Technically speaking, Feijiao's grappling in transition looks terrible. I mean, he's got a good grappling background. I'm wondering if he just is only able to grab guillotines off of takedown attempts or work effectively from top position, because anytime they try to transition or scramble, he's not doing anything.
Feijiao just threw Bader like halfway across the cage.
Yeah, Bader's tired and never had good balance and coordination anyway. This is Feijiao's round. Bader's trying to coast to victory, the old Misha Tateism.
In fairness, he can do math because he's up 2 rounds to none.
Unlike Clay Guida, but yes. Feijiao's trying to win this fight. It's just, if he'd tried in the first 2 rounds, we'd be in a completely different position in the fight than we are right now. It's just not a good performance out of Feijiao. He's looking at a pink slip following this fight, depending on how much they're paying him and how much the UFC feels they need him.
And having a faction against the cage as the referee breaks them up, and they square up.
If Levine separates you, you know you've done something wrong.
And Ryan Bader back to his old tricks again, burying his head in his midsection, trying to go for a single leg takedown. And they dance against the cage.
They're not dancing. This is just sad.
Ryan completes a takedown, finally. He's working from half guard.
Another major technical and tactical error by Feijiao there. He kept his feet way too close together against the fence. You have to spread your legs out so that your weight is distributed evenly. It makes it exponentially more difficult to secure a takedown against the cage from that point. Any good fighter does that. It's one of the first things they do.
Yeah, it's like squaring yourself up to being hit.
Pat, you recently quit the MMA podcast on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock with Robert Winfree and Jeff Harris because of a number of reasons. You jerk. For a number of reasons, not the least of which was the level of fighting you saw. Does this match reaffirm your decision to walk away from the podcast?
If I hadn't done it already, I would be doing it right now.
Pat, did you leave the area where your computer is to go get a drink?
Yeah, I did actually, because you started talking about MMA, so I got bored. No, in all seriousness, if I hadn't left the show already, I would have left it by now, because this is sad and embarrassing that these guys, first of all, that one of them was in line for a title shot at a certain point. Come on.
And one of them had a title in a lesser organization.
Yeah, well, it was Strikeforce, so I mean, you know. That's
just Strikeforce. It was Strikeforce at light heavyweight. There are certain titles in certain weight classes for lesser organizations that mean something depending on the time frame you're talking about.
In fairness, yeah, let's give it up for Bellator's lightweight title. That actually does mean something right now, surprisingly enough, despite their best efforts. 2
interim titles. I was going to say their featherweight title probably means more. But, I mean, also, for example, the UFC welterweight title has always meant something. Their 205 title meant nothing when Pride was running and had a roster full of guys at that weight class who knew what they were doing.
Yeah, and the UFC heavyweight title still means nothing.
Means very little. Mostly because Cain Velasquez fights once a year, so it means so it has devalued considerably.
That's right. We need to get a heavyweight champion that actually defends his title. Okay, we need a fighting champion, not some B-plus player. See what I did there?
Yeah, I'm responding with my silence.
I'd tell you who deserves a shot. El Dandy.
Who are you to doubt El Dandy?
Dandy. Ah, damn it.
That guy's a heck of a wrestler. He's a jam-up guy and a great technician.
Robert and I really bumped heads on the way to that one. All right, I think we can safely say this has been a 30-27 fight for Ryan Bader, so it'll end up being 29-28 Fejao split decision.
I hope so. I really do.
I'm kind of with you there. Look, Bader, in this particular instance, solidified the fact that he's still just an upper-level gatekeeper instead of a lower-level gatekeeper, and Fejao will soon be standing in line for a government check. I don't have a whole lot redeeming to say about this entire fight.
This was bowling shoe ugly.
As an aside, ladies and gentlemen, this is why I tend not to cover these events, because of the voodoo curse placed upon me. I don't know who did it. I don't know why they did it, but it leads to events full of boring fights or Team Alpha Male victories.
Just had to slide in the Team Alpha Male hate. That's okay. I hate
Just
them.
a little. Let me say this.
Not Joe Benavidez, though. I like Joe Benavidez. Let's clear the air on that.
He's a nice guy. It's sad he's just not good enough to beat Demetrius Johnson.
And yet he's the best fighter in that stable and can't win a title.
You know, let me say this. In defense of TJ Dillashaw, he had the correct game plan to beat Renan Barão. I still think John Dodson would knock him out.
Which he already has.
Yeah, I think you'd do it again. I think you put those two together in a cage. I think John Dodson still knocks out TJ Dillashaw. It has nothing to do with weight classes or necessarily objective skill sets. It's just how they fight. Dodson is more than patient enough to let Dillashaw try and move his way in and then counter-strike and knock him out.
And despite their best efforts, the judges have scored this correctly. 30-27 Ryan Bader across the board.
Somewhere out there, Clucky is just throwing himself a fit. He knew it was 29-28 Fejao. Okay?
He's still resting after the last fight.
And Matt Hughes still goes to the same barber despite that man's best efforts.
All right, moving on to our co-feature of the night. 3 rounds in the welterweight division. Not for a chance at Johnny Hendricks' welterweight title. That come later at UFC on Fox. Matt Brown versus Robbie Lawler. Instead, tonight we get Rory McDonald versus Tyrone Woodley. Now, this fight, Robert Winfree, can go one of two ways. It could either stop time itself, or time will, in fact, splinter and into oblivion, causing all of time and space to just cease to exist, or someone gets knocked out in the first round. This has got heavyweight bad or heavyweight good potential.
Look, considering that we've already seen a bad heavyweight fight and 2 bad light heavyweight fights, I have no hope for this fight. You just hit it. There's 2 ways this can go. How has the night gone so far? Where's the energy in the building going? Where's the momentum? It's not good. Look, Wyatt Bowser, and I'm probably mispronouncing that.
I believe it's Bozier.
Bozier.
Sure.
I would tell you that it's Smith.
Okay, in the roundtable discussion for this fight, Wyatt was kind enough to point out in his prediction that if I was covering this fight would stop time. I'm not providing live coverage, but I am watching it live, so apparently that's good enough.
Rory McDonald in his last 3 fights that were relevant, because that one against BJ Penn was an abortion. He beat Jake Ellenberger in a fight that made me want to claw my eyes out. I almost quit watching MMA after that. He lost to Robbie Lawler in a split decision, and then I think he ran out.
How was that a split decision?
That's what
Canadian
it says here.
lucky.
and I believe he ran out of the cage crying. And then he came back and won a decision victory over Damian Maia, which was the fight of the night, and it actually looked like the man had some energy in his step. He takes on Tyrone Woodley, another Strikeforce crossover. Starting to see a theme here tonight. He's got 2 wins. His last 2 fights were against some good name opponents. He beat Josh Koscheck via KO at 4 minutes and 38 seconds. It was the knockout of the night at UFC 167. He came back with a TKO over Carlos Condit, and Carlos Condit had a tweak of the knee, a knee injury that put him out of the fight in Dallas. So they'll meet each other in just a few moments.
And you've deliberately glossed over his split decision loss to Jake Shields in a fight so bad it made someone quit watching MMA.
I don't talk about Jake Shields. It's against my religion.
Fair enough. Interestingly enough, did you hear that Jake Shields is out of his fight with John Fitch?
No, I don't talk about Jake Shields. It's not against my religion. I would like to point out that Tyron Woodley is also another Strikeforce title holder. He was the last man to hold the vacant Strikeforce. No, wait. No,
he wasn't.
Sorry, that was Nate Marquardt. I apologize.
No, it wasn't.
Tarek Safadine.
Tarek Safadine beat Marquardt for the welterweight title at their last event.
He did.
Woodley had a shot at the vacant belt against Marquardt and was brutally knocked out in the 4th round.
You're absolutely right. I got it backwards. So sue me, Jeff Harris.
I might. We live in an overly litigious society. I could find cause in what you've just said.
You probably could. But, yeah.
But I wouldn't do it
like-
because Mark's Jewish and you're not.
I don't like my lawyer enough to give him the money for a petty lawsuit.
I was doing really well at reading off the notes and getting all the information out there. I stumbled over one of them. It's fucking late and I've had alcohol. Get off my back.
Look, I don't blame you. No one cares. Look, Woodley desperately needs a good performance here. Both of these guys are highly rated. They have good winning records, but no one cares. And this is a fight that you need to come out of this with some buzz, with some hype. You can't just try and sell yourself on a lackluster decision win here. Not when you've got Matt Brown and Robbie Lawler fighting for the next title shot.
The problem here for both guys, I think, is their rankings and where they stand. Because these are two guys who we have never seen risk things when they don't have to and when they're not in position to. These are two guys who are going to play it as safe as possible. And I think that is why my eyes may bleed after 15 minutes.
All right, we've got another response here from the Twitterverse. Carl Osterlund continuing to play the home game tonight along with a few others. If you want to join us here on the home game for the UFC 174 live cover alternative commentary. This is only going to get worse as the night goes on, folks. I am at Mark Radulich, MarkRadulich on Twitter. Carl Osterlund writes in, Tyrone Woodley against a great defensive fighter makes for some hardcore Valium. Let's hope McDonald is really active tonight. You ain't just whistling Dixie, Buster.
No, you're not. This is one of those instances where what we're trying to achieve is addition. I refer to as addition by subtraction. If you put two fighters with terrible resumes in terms of fight quality in the cage together, there's a better than average chance you'll get a watchable fight. That happened a couple of instances ago where two guys who, and I forget who, I was doing coverage. No, I wasn't. That was the joke. No, two guys who have terrible histories were paired up and they had a watchable fight. It wasn't great, but it was watchable. The problem is frequently when you pair up guys who are good or have something to lose, as Pat mentioned, they don't fight the way they normally do. They feel the pressure of, I could lose something serious here, be it a title shot, an actual title, a ranking, whatever it happens to be, and they'll fight conservatively. I imagine this is part of the reason the UFC doesn't tell people if you lose, you're fired. Because you'll just wind up with two guys fighting terrifyingly conservatively in a desperate bid not to be fired. It's a bad trend in the world of MMA right now. Incidentally, it's one of the reasons I love Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson, because he tries to improve as a fighter, and the good stuff follows that.
And this is what separates guys like this from a guy like Matt Brown, who has several losses on his ledger, but he's aware of that. So he's not shy about the potential of losing, and he understands that, if I lose, I am where I am. I'm a mid-range guy, but because he's willing to put it on the line and put that effort out there, he's come up with a series of wins that were not only exciting but were unexpected against a good level of competition that have stamped him into a shot at potentially the UFC welterweight title should he win his next fight. That's what will separate a guy like that who may not have the glossy on-paper record with only 1 or 2 losses like these guys, but because he's put together an exciting series of fights against good opposition, his previous losses don't matter because the mind of the public is very short-term, and they're not going to remember who he lost to in 2006 by submission in 2 rounds.
Isn't that Dong Young Kim, or is that Chris Lytle?
I believe it was Chris Lytle.
All right.
I knew Lytle had tapped him. He lost a split decision to Kim that I thought was dubious.
All right, and I want to remind folks that this edition of the Radulich and Broadcasting Live alternative commentary for UFC 174 is brought to you by Cayman Jack Margarita, 100% blue agave nectar. It makes MMA watchable.
We're also sponsored by Mel's Strange and Unusual Meats. They got cat meat, they got dog meat, they got meat that people eat, they got meat that eats people.
Robert, would you like to plug something nonsensically?
Nah, you guys do a better job than I do. I'm here to be the straight man. You guys handle paying the bills.
Fair enough. All right. We are just about ready to get set here.
Okay, as a brief aside, Jim Ross has just pointed out that Woodley and McDonald need to light it up because the pay-per-view has been lackluster so far.
Oh, really? Thanks for the tip, JR.
Jim Ross speaks the truth.
Yeah, Jim Ross can shut up. That guy sucks.
Swick a beer for the working man.
That's not JR.
I know it's not, but I was just taking a sip of my beer. Or my not beer.
Well, then you don't have to say water. You can say whatever you're actually drinking.
If this sucks, I might just start singing Fanfare for the Common Man.
If this sucks, I'm waking up my daughter. I'm going to have her do her rendition of Let It Go.
I'm down.
I would prefer A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes.
She does that one, too.
That's why I've heard that one, and I was very pleased with it.
Okay. Folks, for those of you who don't know, my daughter is 3 and has a high vocabulary for a 3-year-old, but a slightly marble mouth like Kurt Cobain. And here we go. Rory McDonald starts off.
Who brings us tonight's clock, Mark?
Rory
That would
McDonald.
be EA Sports upcoming UFC game, which has been getting terrible reviews.
Yeah, because you can play as Bruce Lee, so buy it.
Have you guys noticed that these guys are wearing trunks that match their skin color?
First time tonight.
Good observation, Winfree.
Well, I still get a kick out of the fact that way back when Czech Congo fought Pat Barry, and they put up the trunks color blog. It said Pat Barry black, Czech Congo white.
Any case, we are tied up here as Tyrone Woodley
In the
has
first
the
of many
advantage.
clinches.
Yes, foot stomping and knee lifts from Tyrone Woodley. Roy McDonald seems to be studying Tyrone Woodley and all of his musculature.
He's looking at all the crappy tattoos the man has adorning his back.
Tyrone Woodley continuing to utilize the knee lift into the thigh and into the torso. Actually, it would be his abdomen would be more correct.
Knee, 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 vicious knee.
That one looked low.
There's been a couple, in all honesty, that look like they got him right in the balls, but I'm just noticing now that he's sponsored by Dude Wipes. That might be worse than Condom Depot on your ass.
Possibly. Oh, and Rory's now broke away looking to jab.
Finally,
That's a question mark kick. Jeez. That's a poor decision.
What makes it a poor decision?
Why would you try to kick a wrestler in the head when that wrestler is known to go for takedowns early and often?
And not afraid to shoot the single leg, which is actually his preferred takedown method. He loves to get at one hold of a leg and shoot a high crotch grip and put you on your back. That kind of kick is just stupid and asking for trouble because the distance you're throwing it at is easily closed on because you're off balance.
And there he tries another front kick and almost gets taken down. You need to throw a lot. Low kicks and middle kicks in MMA are more important because they're easier to defend follow-up takedowns, and they set up your other attacks more effectively. Going cold to the head doesn't work in contemporary MMA.
Tyrone Woodley keeps opening up the palms of his hands and jutting them forward. This is going to end in a poke to the eye possibly ending the fight if he keeps doing it.
Well, if John Jones can get away with it, even though John Jones actually did the technically correct thing when extending your hand to avoid constantly being berated by the referee and minimize the risk of eye pokes.
On the other hand, when Phil Davis did it, he blinded a man for life.
Well, Phil Davis didn't do it properly.
Phil Davis yelled out, "Woo!" and tried to get out of it.
Look, there's actually a method to extending your hand forward, open palm, and minimize the risk of an eye poke, and that's you keep your hands closed and slightly cupped in what's referred to as the beauty pageant wave.
Tyrone Woodley has the lead.
And if you're wondering why I'm telling you that, it's because they're clinched against the fence not doing anything.
Tyrone Woodley has finally taken Rory McDonald to the ground in an aggressive manner. Wasn't able to keep him on the mat. Rory McDonald is back up.
I wouldn't even say that's a completed takedown.
Lands a kick to the midsection. He's got Woodley backed against the cage right now, stalking him.
Well, this is smart by McDonald. McDonald, for all of the conservative fights and lackluster performances, he has a good gas tank. Tyron Woodley does not. If McDonald is able to continue this game plan, some kicks to the body, maybe dig that left to the liver that he used so effectively against BJ Penn, he can wear Woodley out in the second and third round. Woodley already looks tired.
What he needs to stop doing, though, is throwing those high kicks when in close range, because that's just
even
going
if
to
you land, you're not landing.
Yeah, there's no snap or effectiveness on that kick because the effective range is smothered to avoid the snap that would give you the power behind that kick and the turnover, and you're asking to be taken down and give Woodley a reprieve where even if he's not in shape to really take advantage, he can still put you on your back, score points, and maintain a breather.
Well, I'll give credit to Rory. He has that was at least thrown at proper range. Guys, for anyone out there, throwing a proper upper kick at the head, you want to land with the shin a little bit above where it meets the ankle. You don't want to land near the knee, which is what a lot of guys do if you throw them in close. Good combination against the fence there by Rory. He seems to have found the range, or Woodley is just that gassed out.
The round's over. Let's go to your scorecards, gentlemen. Pat, you go first. Who won that round?
I'm going to give the edge to Rory McDonald. I thought he did more damage. I thought he, towards the end of the round at least, became the aggressor as Woodley looked to have visibly slowed down. The only real significant strikes I saw were from McDonald. Woodley got to bull him to the cage, landed, knees to the thigh and whatnot, but didn't really do anything effective. So I give it 10-9 to McDonald.
Now, you're aware of McDonald's the white one?
You got to do damage to win a round.
Well, let me go over to you, Robert Winfree, because I disagree with Pat. I actually thought Tyrone Woodley won that round. I thought he controlled the round more. I thought he did a lot of damage with the knee lifts. He had a takedown there at the end, though he wasn't able to keep him on the ground for very long. I just thought overall, with what we've come to expect from MMA and MMA judging, that Tyrone Woodley secured that round for himself. What is your opinion?
My opinion is if you're using the low median of MMA judging, then yes, Woodley might have squeezed it out if that's the criteria. I think McDonald probably won that round. Woodley didn't do anything. First of all, I don't count that as a takedown. It wasn't completed. McDonald got up immediately. He was never in anything approaching a dominant position. I viewed those more as an extended scramble.
Yeah,
and Woodley missed a lot of punches, and McDonald came on stronger towards the end of that round. I'm leaning towards McDonald, but if you say Woodley, I won't argue too much because clinching against the fence seems to mean a whole lot. And there's an axe kick of all the asinine things you could throw.
Rory McDonald follows it up with an aborted single leg takedown. Leg kick from Woodley.
Sad that he aborted that. Woodley suffers from what a lot of wrestlers suffer from. If you take them down, they have no clue what to do.
They go into panic mode immediately because they're taught, do not let your shoulders hit that mat. Do not let your back hit that mat. And unfortunately, a lot of times it results in them giving up their back, which is a worse position to be in more times than not in MMA.
Yeah,
But that's what I was saying in the last fight with Feijao. I said, you're not a wrestler. You're a jiu-jitsu guy. Don't be so afraid to be on your back. So if you're attacking from your back, you can, you have an opportunity to win the fight. you're right about a lot of wrestlers. The mentality is don't stay on your back. Instead of trying to stay on your back and actually attack from that position, gain some sort of an advantage, or at least get yourself out of the position that you're in. They tend to flip over, give up their back, and that's where you see a lot of guys win by rear naked choke.
Well, especially at the lower levels of competition. And the other thing with Woodley is he's never fought a guy who's been committed to working him over from that position or trying to take him down with any degree of regularity. I felt it was a huge error on the part of Josh Koscheck to bail on as many takedown attempts as he did.
Yeah, without question.
We've never seen Woodley have to fight off of his back or in these really prolonged active ground battles. Normally, if he's on top, he's low in your guard, has his arms and head in a safe position, and doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, he got a reputation as a wet blanket for a reason. He's not one of those guys who got it without deserving it. Now, he did. I'd be curious to see what he does if he's on bottom, and no one's really put an effort in to try and take him there.
Now, I want to give McDonald credit here, though, because what we're seeing is kind of an extension of the Marquardt game plan that worked so well against Woodley, keeping him at distance against the cage where you can pick and choose your strikes against him and kind of just pile up the points even if you don't want to necessarily knock him out or try for it. And McDonald's doing that well, and he's a cerebral guy. He's a safety-first fighter, but he's doing the right thing here, even if it's not the most entertaining. And to be fair, I'm getting more enjoyment out of this so far than I have our previous few entries, based on seeing a guy fight somewhat intelligently and use a good game plan. I think Woodley is crazy for not throwing more leg kicks, though, not to Rogan it up, because he has strong legs that are very solid. McDonald does not have very muscular legs, and it would help him get inside that striking distance.
Well, and the few he's landed they've had an impact. Again, like you say, not to Rogan it up, but if it's a tactical advantage or a weapon he could use, he should be using it. There he goes. But yeah, more of those. Woodley doesn't seem to know how to circle. He's letting McDonald get him into the fence and beat him up from there. So.
Well, and that goes back to his wrestling background, where when you attack or defend, it's generally in straight lines back and forth. You'll circle until you're ready to advance, and you only advance generally in straight lines forward or backward to sprawl backwards or go shoot that takedown in low forward. These guys don't always adapt well to lateral movement, and you're seeing the consequences of it right here.
McDonald's got the lead now in strikes to the body in round 2, 10-1.
Well, McDonald is starting to be more active, and thank heavens this fight is not sucking anymore. And we had some moments there in the first round, but we've at least got some action here, and Woodley seems to be in a very defensive and reactive shell. He's letting McDonald dictate the pace, and McDonald is mixing up his strikes well. He's not just headhunting, which is a bad habit a lot of guys get into. He's going upstairs and downstairs very well. He's keeping Woodley from generating any power, getting any distance that he would like. It's a really smart use of cage control here by Roy McDonald.
And again, the big thing is he's not smothering his own attack like he was earlier. He's using that lead hand to measure the distance to know where he can land an effective strike, rather than land something in close without getting his full weight behind it. He's doing a much better job here than when we saw him throwing high kicks from a 6-inch range, where he's measuring with those punches, keeping the lead hand extended to know he's got distance to work with, and also, again, going high-low, mixing it up, and fighting with his hands, not with his eyes, giving Woodley an idea of where he's going with his attack.
Much more superior round there for Rory McDonald. Easily takes the 10-9 over Tyrone Woodley. On your guys' scorecards, he's leading 2-0. Hopefully he can continue the momentum, possibly even end this fight in the third round. Right now, it's Rory McDonald's fight to lose.
I also enjoyed the Alex Wright dancing at the end of the last round.
Oh, Alex Wright, where have you gone?
He retired not all that long ago, actually. He was still active on the indie scene for quite some time. Although I will say this, Claudio Castagnoli doing the Alex Wright dance is better than Alex Wright doing it.
Oh, poor Dust Wunderkind.
Seriously, Claudio Castagnoli did the Alex Wright dance once. It was awesome.
Call him Cesaro. Nobody knows who Claudio Castagnoli is.
Well, if he was going by Cesaro when he did it, I'd call him Cesaro. At the time, he was going by Claudio, his real name.
Man, nobody likes that name. His name is Cesaro.
Yeah, he lost the first
Here we go.
And he got hampered with Paul Heyman, who brings nothing to the table at this point, I'm convinced.
Save that for the WrestleCast. Oh,
Oh, wow.
we've got a fast
Woodley
exchange.
might
of
actually
football
know
here.
that he needs a finish.
Woodley's looking for the KO early on in round 3.
He may
Woodley
have taken the
utilizing the
second
jab.
round off. Just because he was tired.
I think he also knows that McDonald doesn't respond well to active pressure as opposed to one effort and the guy backs off and McDonald gets comfortable again. You know, we saw Robbie Lawler apply constant pressure to McDonald, and that's what worked for him, and Woodley may have taken note of that.
Pat, what do you think of that? When Tyrone Woodley throws that left jab and then he drops his hand all the way down. In other words, he throws it out there, and as soon as his arm is fully extended, the hand drops straight back down again and goes to his side.
There's no reason to not charge in with a right hand right over the top of that. It's step to your right as soon as you see that jab coming and counter right over the top of the right hand. Woodley's another guy who carries his chin very high, particularly right after he throws a punch. You can step in and knock him out. It's been done before. Actually, Nate Marquardt stepped in with an elbow and did it, which was fantastic. But McDonald has enough reach to his advantage that he doesn't even have to worry about a counter so long as he covers intelligently with his left hand in front of his face. So him not doing that makes me question, again, just where he stands as far as knowing when he needs to be aggressive and knowing not. And we get back to the conversation of safety-first fighting. There's safety first, but there's also a lack of intelligence when it comes to knowing you can finish a guy.
Well, safety first doesn't mean boring. There's a really bad mingling of the two as far as, oh, this guy's a safety first fighter. He can't be fun to watch.
And I think round 2 is a good illustration of that.
Oh, McDonald with a takedown. Woohoo! And if you'll notice, Tyron Woodley immediately goes to full closed guard and tries to wrap up the head. See my previous discussion of guys on their back who don't want to do anything and are just desperately trying to be stood back up by the official.
I is wrestler, me no want on back.
I appreciate the mentality of I'm not going to be taken down, but if you don't drill how to get up, you're just doing yourself a huge disservice. And Rory from top position, this is one of his better spots. I mean, for as much as he likes to jab and fight from the outside, top position is where he is the most effective in any of his fights. This is where he does most of his damage. This is where he's effective. And again, Woodley going straight for the lockdown. He's got wrist control. He's got the closed guard. He's trying to get the official to stand them up for inactivity. He's not even trying to get Rory off of him.
But how smart is that as a strategy when you're in the third round, you've lost the previous 2, you have to finish the guy? I would tell you that every second in the round is precious, and you don't want to be throwing it away on a hopeful stand-up. What if the referee's asleep on his feet? What if the referee thinks Rory McDonald's actually doing something? What if Rory McDonald is actually doing something?
It's a big mistake, especially later in a fight, that a lot of guys fall into. And then you either get guys complaining about being stood up, or on occasion you get guys complaining that they weren't stood up. And this is one of those circumstances. At some points in a fight, if you need a breather or depending on the round, taking some time off and going for the lockdown is acceptable. If you're this far behind, you've got to put the feet on the hips. You've got to go to butterfly. You've got to try to push. Honestly, I would even rather see Woodley throw up a triangle or an armbar, knowing full well it's not going to succeed, but you get Rory to posture and move, and you can use that separation to create a scramble and regain the feet yourself. Rory doesn't have the kind of smothering top control and top pressure that a lot of guys do, who will just shrug off into an armbar attempt and pass immediately to side control and keep their full pressure on you. That's not the way he defends those submissions well. Going towards S-mount here, he got way too high. He could have been the beauty of the S-mount. For those of you who don't know what that is, when you're in full mount, it's a position where your legs kind of form an S. You have one knee bent one direction, and the advantage is you can actually attack either arm. You don't have to set up on one arm when you go for an arm bar. But Rory in full side control now. He could have a version of the mounted crucifix here if he turns into Woodley just a little bit.
Yeah, he's got to distribute that weight a little better across the top, and he can get those arms pinned down and controlled and just hammer away if he sees fit. But I think he knows he's in position where he can kind of ride this out at this point and take home a decision. Woodley had a real brief moment in the beginning of this round, but ever since then it's been all McDonald, and Woodley probably just used everything he had at the start of the round and not much else afterward.
It was even an armbar attack there. He had the arm partially isolated. All he would have had to do was pull his head out, rotate his hips, and sit back. But you know what? McDonald really needed a win. He needed a win in a fight that didn't suck. He, checked off the boxes.
But I don't think he earned himself a title shot. Maybe, let's keep him warm for whatever happens between Robbie Lawler and Matt Brown.
I'm partially convinced Johnny Hendricks will injure something else between now and his next scheduled title defense. And Rory McDonald will fight Robbie Lawler in a rematch for the interim welterweight championship.
Do we have an expectation on when Carlos Condit will be back?
He mentioned in an interview earlier tonight with Ariel Helwani, he's looking at early 2015. He's able to walk around now, but he's actually not been cleared yet for even jogging or sparring. So he's got
a damn shame.
That's one of the reasons I hate Tyron Woodley, because his fight injured Carlos Condit.
Well, as I was saying, I think Rory McDonald needs to just stay loose, stay warm, and be ready to be called up in case any one of the following people is injured before their scheduled fights. Johnny Hendricks, Matt Brown, and Robbie Lawler. At some point, he can fit into any one of those slots if somebody falls out. If you need to get him on the card fighting somebody, say the next time, say with a winner of Robbie Lawler, and Matt Brown, have him fight somebody at welterweight, anybody at this point, maybe Damian Maia. No, he's already done Damian Maia. And stick him on the card just in case somebody falls out of their fight with Johnny Hendricks. But at this point, if I were Rory McDonald, I'd just kind of sit and wait for my opportunity. I don't know if I would be taking another fight.
I just want to point out for all Showtime subscribers that on Show Extreme HD, if you turn there now, you can watch Busty Coeds versus Lusty Cheerleaders.
Setting DVR now.
You guys are sad.
There's nothing sad about boobs.
Especially when it's
I
not
would argue that point a great deal, sir.
Carl Osterlin from the Home Game says, an inside tip told me that UFC judges are calling it 30-26 for Woodley.
Crazier things have happened. Thankfully, Rory McDonald did win the unanimous decision, which he absolutely deserved. So I'm with you as far as Rory's future. Stay loose because, injuries occur more often than not, and they occur more frequently towards the top of a card than they do towards the bottom. So if I'm Rory McDonald, see what happens. Lawler and Brown, I think everyone is probably picking Robbie Lawler to win that fight. Not as a knock on Matt Brown, but just because of how Robbie Lawler fights versus how Matt Brown fights. And, again, I just don't want to see Johnny Hendricks' first title defense be a rematch with Robbie Lawler. I'm more than a little fed up with rematches in MMA at the moment. But good win for Rory McDonald.
Seems to have made the Canadian hometown crowd happy.
Well, Canadians.
I'll be fair and say that I think if Rory had put on a performance that we're used to from him, which is not a good thing, they probably would have booed him.
Yeah, that's true. That was the craziest thing. Even in New Mexico last week, when Diego Sanchez was awarded the decision over Ross Pearson, well, after Ross Pearson was robbed, first of all, the crowd cheered his winning and then immediately started booing because they realized, no, wait. They realized, wait, he probably lost that fight.
Yeah, I'm going to go on record, by the way, right now, since people are actually listening to this, and say that's easily the worst decision I've seen in MMA. I don't care. That sticks out. There's not a round I can justify giving to Diego Sanchez.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was... You know what? That's what happens when I cover stuff. That's all I'll say. Diego Sanchez gets a 30-27 score and an undeserved 29-28 as well to win that fight. I have to apologize to Ross Pearson. My voodoo curse screwed you out of a well-deserved and well-fought victory.
Well, I got a win bonus, so
Uncle Buck is on ABC Family.
I want to take this opportunity to once again thank Larry Zonka and 401mania.com for including our live coverage in his live coverage thread over at 401mania.com/MMA. We really appreciate that. If you're looking to hear more of Robert Winfree talking MMA, he has a show Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. We'll actually have some guests on this week filling in the panel chairs.
That's actually not this week. It's next week. We have a couple of guests scheduled for not this week, but the next week. At the very least, I'm pretty sure Brandon Jones is going to be there. He runs a smaller MMA promotion in the state of Arizona. And if possible, his Muay Thai trainer, the guy who works out of their gym, I was not able to catch his full name. But at least one of those guys is going to be on the show next week, so we'll have an interview with them. So keep an eye out for that.
Sean Comer expressed an interest in maybe jumping on the show, so you might want to hook up with him sometime between now and tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. But yeah, every Sunday night on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, Robert Winfree and Jeff Harris talk MMA. It's a great show. You can check it out there. 8 o'clock Sunday night Eastern Standard Time.
How is Ian McCall ranked above Ali Bagatinov?
His gay mustache that was really cool in Williamsburg.
Has Ian McCall actually won a fight in the UFC?
He won a decision I didn't necessarily felt he should have.
He's won one fight, I think, in the UFC. I'm going to double-check that.
Meanwhile, Ali Bag of Donuts has only lost 2 fights in his entire career. He's won all of his fights since 2011, since May 26th of 2011. He's been with the UFC now for 3 cards, all of which he won, 2 of which were decisions, 1 of which was a TKO in the 3rd round in Brazil at UFC Fight Night, Teixeira versus Bader.
Okay, Ian McCall's record with the UFC is 1-2-1. He lost the rematch with Demetrius Johnson, lost to Joseph Benavidez, had a majority draw in the first fight with Johnson. That was actually really unfortunate for him. I thought he was winning that fight, and had they gone to a fourth sudden victory round, Mighty Mouse was slowing down, and McCall was still coming on strong. But he has just one win. He defeated Iliarde Santos at UFC 163, and I'm kind of with Pat. That was a not as clear-cut a win as you would hope to see out of a guy who's going to be ranked number 3.
Against Iliarde Santos, who is not even in the top 10 of a very shallow division.
Yeah.
Well, Ali Bag of Donuts is certainly no slouch. He was the former flyweight champion for Fight Nights, which apparently is a promotion out of Russia. He defended the belt 3 times before he came over to the UFC, where he's taken on Marcos Vinicius, Tim Elliott, and most recently John Lineker at UFC 169.
Interesting side note, one of those fights, I forget which one, he suffered a pretty bad tear to his ear. Really a nasty, really unfortunate injury that Bagatinov suffered in that fight. Didn't bother him at all. He came back and knocked the guy out, but...
Yeah, that was the Marcos Vinicius fight.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, really just not a, life-threatening or career-ending injury, but kind of a gruesome injury, and he just didn't care at all. So the guy's got the mental game. He's got the toughness.
Of course, tonight is our world championship match, because I can't seem to say flyweight in public. Demetrius Johnson, current holder of the flyweight world of the UFC TV title. He lost to Dominic Cruz in a opportunity to win the bantamweight title back in 2011 when Dominic Cruz was actually fighting. He went to a draw the first time around with Ian McCall in Australia due to Australian math, and since then he's had one win after another. He started off a little slow. He had 3 decision wins. People were a little fuzzy on whether or not this guy was ever going to be able to finish a fight, and then he finished 2 of them. He submitted John Moraga back at UFC on Fox almost a year ago in July. That was after, of course, the Jake Ellenberger and Rory McDonald fight that put everyone to sleep like poppies from the Wizard of Oz. Then he went on to KO Joe Benavidez.
Yay!
On Fox, Johnson versus Benavidez 2. That was back in December of 2013. So he looks to continue his streak of finishing fights. We'll see what he does here against Ali Bag of Donuts.
It needs to be brought up. Apparently, the UFC is now promoting Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson as having true one-punch knockout power. Whereas in every fight prior to his fight with Joseph Benavidez, his striking was considered a serious weakness and he couldn't bust a grape.
Pat, what are your thoughts on Ali Bag of Donuts' chances here?
Ali Bagatimov is probably the best pure grappler that Demetrius Johnson has ever fought in his career, and that includes his time at bantamweight. You're talking about a guy who's got multiple accolades from FILA, from the World Sambo Federation, from the Pancration Federation of the world, and in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where he was the Russian national champion in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is a guy who, when you get in close with him, can do pretty much anything he wants with you if you give him an opportunity. Johnson has been working diligently on his striking and his cutting angles and his speed, and that's what he's going to need in order to compete with Bagatimov, because he's not going to win this fight in close quarters against such a great, strong grappler and a guy who's legitimately tough, where you can hit him all day long and it's not going to bother him. Robert brought up the mention of his ear being torn. He didn't even react to it. He just got better as that fight went on. And that's a thing that he shares in common with Johnson. When adversity rears its head, these are guys who rise to the occasion. I think this is probably the toughest matchup Johnson has at flyweight, other than maybe a rematch with a refocused John Dodson. And Bagatimov is absolutely a live challenger here, particularly if he can get a hold of Johnson in the early stages of this fight and wear him down early, carry that weight, make him scramble, make him work, so that he has a shot in the later rounds to compete with that speed advantage that Johnson's going to carry.
So I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page for UFC 174, where I've been getting most of my notes for tonight. And under the McDonald Tyrone Woodley, it says method, robbery. Unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board, and then it says throw up.
And that is why they don't let kids use Wikipedia as a source site when they do essays for school.
Yeah, that I don't know how you would consider that a robbery. I got a kick out. The only one of those bizarre entries that I got a kick out of was an early stoppage where the entry read, I forget who it was, so-and-so won via TKO because ref has the downs.
There's been a couple of good ones.
My favorite was, I think UFC won, I forget the event, it wasn't too long ago, early 170s, wherein they altered the entire fight card. The main event was still, I think it was John Jones and Glover Teixeira. The co-main event was Godzilla and George the Animal Steel taking on King Kong and King Kong Bundy.
Brilliant.
I mean, every fight except the main event had been altered to some glorious monster mashup.
That's
I
right.
would probably pay to see that, first of all.
I would have settled just for George the Animal Steel versus King Kong Bundy.
You probably don't have to settle. You should come live in Jersey, Mark. They got those going on once a month.
You couldn't get me to move to Jersey. I have a, I can smell.
I was going to say you don't have the downs.
So Dude Wipes is trending on Twitter.
Are those like facial tissues? Womp womp.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Chirp, chirp, chirp.
Mighty Mouse's only sponsor is Xbox.
When you got a big sponsor, you only need one.
Yeah, he probably pulls in more bank from that than, a guy who has Condom Depot and Dude Wipes on his shorts.
Well, lest you forget, he has Condom Depot, Dude Wipes, Gunshop.com, and maybe a shout-out to Venom's fight gear.
Remember when Dana White thought that the MMA was going to be bigger than soccer?
Dana White's an idiot.
I really just don't see any redeeming qualities in him whatsoever.
Look, if he was saying MMA might be bigger than soccer just as far as the United States go, I can probably see that happening.
I'm just pointing this out because of the wonderful list of sponsors we just rattled off. I mean,
you've got what? Dynamic Fastener is probably one of the bigger names that sponsor guys right now. You have a few guys like Demetrius Johnson who has Xbox, John Jones has Nike, but so many of these guys you look at their sponsors on their shorts or on their fight banners or who they talk about. They're not big names. They tend to sell. They tend to operate in limited market spaces.
I thought you were going to say they tend to sell specialized products like condoms and dude wipes.
Okay, they sell specialized products to narrow markets. I mean, it's not a. There's not a lot of really high-level sponsorship opportunities out there for a lot of these guys. It takes a big name in big opportunities to get, a legitimately large sponsor. I mean, Johnson took a while to get Xbox. It was his, I know he had them when he
had it
fought.
since I've been watching. He's had Xbox as his sponsor since at least I've been watching MMA.
Really? I don't remember it being there for... I remember it being there for his fight with John Moraga on Fox.
No, I
couldn't tell you about
I'm wrong. If you're on Twitter and you're listening to this, you can tweet me back at Mark Radulich, MarkRadulich. But I'm pretty sure he had Xbox going as far back to his fight against Dominic Cruz.
I know he had them for the McCall fights and the Benavidez fights because I remember vividly the lime green shorts. It's kind of hard to forget.
Fair enough. My mistake. I wonder what he did then. Who he knows. Because when he was fighting Dominic Cruz for the world title, okay. But
yeah, but that fight was on Versus too. And
yeah, that's my other point. Like, wait a minute. We're on Versus, and you've got Microsoft sponsoring you. He must know somebody. That's kind of my assumption there. Which is not a bad... I'm not knocking the guy for that.
You know what, though? Microsoft, you have to figure, they want to promote Xbox. They do probably a pretty decent number of UFC games for Xbox in terms of what they sell. They probably thought it wasn't a bad idea to just get somebody on that payroll that they could promote Xbox in addition to not just the UFC game. So maybe that was the rationale. Like,
up until recently, no one knew who the hell Demetrius Johnson was.
Yeah,
which struck me was a bit odd.
I just thought they would have to pay somebody else more.
That's also true. That could be true. They were looking for someone to sponsor, and Mighty Mouse said, "You know what? I'll do it for the cheapest."
That could conceivably be the case, as we see the fighters start to get loose and ready for this championship bout for the world title in the UFC.
Ali Bagatinov is a 500 underdog?
That seems high.
That seems a bit steep. I'd take those odds. I mean, I think Johnson's going to win. I'll get my prediction out there. It's because I love Demetrius Johnson, but 5-1 is pretty stiff. You're not giving the guy the credit he deserves as far as that goes. That's some tempting odds, and the guy could actually win.
Made by the fact that the odds makers don't know who the hell this guy is either.
No, the odds makers generally are hired as such to specialize on a fight-by-fight basis. This is just a case of where I think they phoned it in, whereas we had the same situation, I believe, on 1 or 2 cards ago where we all were like, how is this guy an underdog, and came in and won the fight fairly handily.
Yeah, we've had a few of those. Underdogs have been paying out recently as far as MMA goes, but there were a couple specifically like, okay, I get that he's an underdog, but 3-1, 4-1.
That's right. Underdogs have been making some surprising gains in 2014, which is why everyone should have put money on Brock Lesnar.
Also true. Wait, everyone did.
Really?
That was the joke. Like everyone, that was one of the because the Vegas takes ridiculous odds on pro wrestling matches for a couple of them every year, especially at WrestleMania. The joke was if you followed the betting lines, by the time they closed betting for Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, which I would assume was after the 8-minute Undertaker entrance, more people had bet on Brock Lesnar than had on the Undertaker. He was actually the favorite.
By the way, it was Matt Brown who was an underdog against Eric Silva that I'm thinking of.
Oh god, that was ridiculous.
All right, this fight is underway. Demetrius Johnson, your flyweight champion, I'll stop making fun of him now, versus Ali Bagatinov from Russia.
I don't know what it is about Dagestan, Russia, but they breed some tough guys out there. I mean, there's 3 or 4 guys in the UFC right now from that region who, if they're not at the top level, are guys you absolutely want to be watching.
There's outreach to train fighters, and that's what's making the difference over there. They're really putting effort into creating good fighters.
Rustam Khabilov did not look out of his depth against Benson Henderson. Khabib Nurmagomedov is going to fight for the interim title when Pettis is re-injured. And who's the other one? Not Bagatinov, obviously. He's fighting for the richest prize in his weight class. There's another guy who, I think it's at welterweight, who not a top-level guy, but has been making some waves and is someone to keep your eyes on, and I'll try and remember his name.
Demetrius Johnson, bouncing around, delivers a leg kick.
To me, it's interesting. He's fighting out of the southpaw stance and putting that lead leg closer to the lead leg of Bagatimov, who's probably going to want to shoot in as fast as he can.
Ooh, good body kick from Bagatinov.
How many times do you think right now Mike Goldberg is saying outspeeded?
I don't want to count.
It'll take some precise precision to get that number.
We can't make fun of him for that one anymore because he made fun of himself for it.
All right, we just got confirmation from the Twitterverse, who are good folks playing the home game. Blackbird22 says, I believe Johnson has had Xbox as a sponsor since the WEC, but for sure he's had Xbox as a sponsor his whole UFC career, which is what I said.
All right, I will eat my crow on that one. I was not as aware of that as I should have been.
Thank you, sir. Not you, I was talking to the guy on Twitter.
Yeah, and thank you for the correction.
I think Johnson wised up a little bit. He saw Bagatimov get very close with some good right hands, and now he went back to an orthodox stance, and as I say, then he switched back to southpaw, of course.
Well, Johnson switches a lot. He likes to give a lot of different looks and try to find the best angle of attack. It's a good trait to have 9 times out of 10. I wonder if it's the best option against Bagatinov. When you want to switch stances and try to confuse your opponent is against guys who will bite on feints and fakes, who can be confused very easily or kind of mesmerized by movement. Ali Bagatinov will kind of wait patiently for you to come to him. This was a problem Johnson had in the first 2 rounds against John Dodson. He did a lot of movement, and Dodson just waited for his spot and was able to clip him multiple times.
Robert Winfree, Carl Osterlund wants to know if the other good Dagestani you were talking about is Rashid Magomedov.
No, but both Magomedov brothers are actually worth watching. Both Rashid and... God, I can't remember the one who fights at heavyweight. No, I want to say...
Fedor Emelianenko?
No, not Fedor.
Nikita Koloff.
Stop that. I'll either remember it or I won't. I don't think
Nikolai Volkov?
No.
This is where it's going to get interesting when we can see these opportunities where Bagatimov and Johnson are clinching together, how the strength advantage of Bagatimov will come into play against Johnson's technique and balance. We're talking about a guy who's got grappling accolades from seemingly every grappling organization in the world that's respected. So to see how Johnson will be able to deal with him and maybe keep him off is going to be very interesting.
Well, this is kind of where Johnson works well in the clinches. He works well in the Thai clinch distance. And for those of you who don't know, in Thai boxing or in clinching, you have enough space to effectively throw knees to the body and head. You can work short punches and elbows. He was able to really mess up John Dodson from that range when they fought in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. He started clinching with him and really worked him over from there. Bagatinov is trying to keep a Greco clinch, which is chest-on-chest pressure. He wants to smother him, look for throws or takedowns. It's really a battle of who can create the proper space at this point in time. And Johnson looks to be holding his own as far as this goes. Johnson not known for his clinch grappling. He's got a great shot and his top control is pretty good, but as far as grappling in the clinch, that's been kind of a weakness. This is where he wants to be. He wants that range where he can throw knees effectively. Bagatinov wants it a lot closer so that he's not in danger of being struck like that and he can secure a takedown.
Another opportunity here to talk about Dagestani fighters, Adlan Amagov.
That's the one I was thinking of. Thank you.
There we go. And we have a takedown. Speaking of Dagestan, we have a takedown here by Ali Bagatinov.
We had a brief throw. I don't count takedowns unless you actually achieve some level of control over your opponent.
Ali Bagatinov took him down and showed him what's what and what.
Good round, incidentally enough, for Ali Bagatinov. He was not completely outmaneuvered and outworked by Johnson. Held his own in the clinch. Both guys still kind of getting a feel for each other, but Bagatinov does not look outclassed. I would also like to remind you this is exponentially longer than Joseph Benavidez lasted in the rematch.
I think both guys here have shown where they're going to trouble the other and where they can have points of success. And I think it's a good thing for both guys to have done it so early, because that's going to get them a measure of respect from the other, and we're going to see both guys really put forth their best efforts here. And I'm excited. This has been a good fight so far because we're seeing tactically what each guy has to offer and what they want to do. And it's kind of playing out like we thought it would, and I'm not disappointed at all.
What's your scorecard, Pat?
I gave the edge to Demetrius Johnson. I felt he was the aggressor early, orchestrated more cage control in those moments, and did land the more effective strikes. He was able to get some separation in the clinch to land good knees. Bagatimov had some moments, but they were largely just getting on the inside and getting body control on Johnson and that late takedown. I don't think it was enough to outdo the knee work of Johnson early, particularly when he had the clinch position.
All right, Demetrius Johnson starting off round 2, attacking with leg kicks. Repeated leg kicks, as a matter of fact.
Good idea for him. Bagatinov has a wider stance, and he's sitting down a little lower. He's trying to defend against a potential shot, while at the same time, it also presents a slightly smaller target for him to be punched in the head with. So a good strategy there to use some leg kicks if he's not going to be in a position to check them effectively.
Yeah, and Bagatimov tends to put more of his weight on that lead leg, looking for the opportunity to clinch, grab, or shoot. So it's a good idea to get that leg. You always want to be able to attack that leg where the weight is, because that's going to throw your opponent off balance and also potentially really hurt him, and depending on the consequences of the movement he has going when you throw the kick.
Bagatinov seems to be a bit too complacent. He's, again, trying to get Johnson to come in, but if Johnson has found his range kicking, he will just be able to pick him apart from that range and force Ali to make a bunch of bad tactical decisions, like swinging and missing counter punches, because Johnson is very hard to hit. The only time he's been hit flush in his UFC career was when he's been moving forward, and guys have been able to land some kind of a timed strike. Ooh, nice head kick from Johnson.
High kick from Bagatinov. Demetrius counters with another kick.
That was a good left hook there from. That's the kind of thing that Bagatinov needs to do. He needs to get Johnson to come forward and commit to a long combination that he can try and counter strike.
I think Bagatimov would be better off feinting those shots or clinch attempts and then throwing something behind it to keep Johnson honest, because at the moment Johnson's going to be able to do whatever he wants to do because he's able to outthink Bagatimov 2 steps down the road ahead of where Bagatimov is right now.
Yeah, Bagatinov is way too reactionary in some of these positions so far. He needs to be a bit more proactive. And Johnson's not a guy who responds well if you're able to actually get pressure on him. Good combination there from Bagatinov. Johnson tends to retreat with his hands down. It's a bad trait a lot of wrestlers have. And he tends to lean backwards, to his credit, he's able to do so far enough away. But as we've seen in the past, if you're leaning and you can't get completely out of the way or your feet aren't moving as well, a punch that lands is going to land about as hard as it can.
It's a pretty even round so far, wouldn't you say, Pat? I would say that Ali and Demetrius are both kind of trading punches and kicks. No one getting a clear advantage over the other.
Yeah, there's definitely been shifts in momentum in the aggression and who's scoring what. Both guys, again, Bagatimov, people were worried that maybe he was out of his depth in this fight because of how good Johnson's been and how he's been getting better with each fight, but certainly holding his own at every possibility and landing good strikes, which is considered the weakness in Bagatimov's game, but he's been able to do well on his feet in certain spots against Johnson, even at a distance.
Right now we see Ali Bagatinov clinching and holding Demetrius Johnson against the fence. Robert, Demetrius Johnson, his clinch work, what do you how's he doing here in your estimation? What's he looking to do?
He's doing really well, especially when you consider the quality of grappler that Bagatinov is, and not just the quality, but the style of grappling that Bagatinov uses. He is very strong in the clinch position. He's thrown around or dominated a lot of guys from this position who are big, who are strong flyweights or strong grapplers. Tim Elliott wasn't able to do anything in this position. He whenever he got John Lineker up against the cage, he was owning him.
And John Lineker is a big flyweight considering how many times he's missed weight.
Yeah, he's a huge guy for the weight class. Johnson is doing this is one of those things where it might not look all that impressive until you realize who he's doing it against. I mean, Khabib Nurmagomedov ragdolling Rafael dos Anjos. If you just see the fight and don't understand how good dos Anjos is, it doesn't mean a whole lot. When you realize what dos Anjos is able to accomplish and the type of fighter he is, it's really impressive. Johnson's holding his own defensively here. Bagatinov, if he wants to drop for a single or a double off of the clinch position, I feel a huge mistake a lot of guys make when doing that is they try to catch the knee that's being thrown and then transition to a takedown off of that. I believe that to be a huge mistake. You're better off trying to pass it and go for the leg that's rooted on the ground. That's the one where all the weight is. That's the best opportunity you have to get them off balance. I think most people grab the leg reflexively, and again, it's a lot of wrestlers do that.
And what we see at the finish of the round.
As the stats came up, it looked like Demetrius Johnson had the lead in strikes. But the last part of that, the last 2.5 minutes, it was Ali Bagatinov holding Demetrius Johnson against the fence, attacking, trying to take him down. He ate a lot of knees in the process, but I would ask you, Robert Winfree, do you think the judges will award that round to Ali Bagatinov based on the fact that he was holding Demetrius Johnson against the fence and sort of ignoring the defense on Demetrius Johnson's part?
Well, effective aggression is a tricky beast in that effective defense can kind of counter it, but you tend to reward effective aggression more. I would say Bagatinov might get that round on the judges' scorecards. He ate a couple of hard shots, but he controlled a lot, and he wasn't dominated on there wasn't the big deficiency in terms of standing strikes or even clinch strikes that there was in, say, the first round. A much closer round and one that could conceivably go to the Russian.
All right, as we start round 3, Demetrius Johnson continuing to attack with leg kicks.
I really admire that every time they get into a clinch and there's some separation, Johnson immediately goes to work with knees. It shows a real dedication to him understanding what Bagatinov's bringing to the table and what he can do to effectively fight against it.
Bagatinov still seems half a step behind, at least, of Demetrius Johnson. I don't know if this is one of those scenarios where a fighter like Johnson is actually at his best when you're half engaging him. Kind of like Bagatinov is here. He's not committing to really attacking him either with grappling or with strikes, which lets Johnson move around a lot and score. This is the same kind of thing that Frankie Edgar has a lot of success with. Guys are afraid to either really try to cut him off or commit to attacking him, or they are way too passive. And in either case, it lets the guy doing a lot of movement find his spots, find his rhythm, and gain the advantage. Bagatinov seems to be adjusting rather well, though. He's able to get Johnson in close. He has him up against the fence yet again here.
One of the things Johnson tries to do at the start of every round is rush to the center and take that center ground. At the start of this round, Bagatinov engaged him directly in the center, so he couldn't aggressively hold it and dictate the movement. And I think that's why they're in the position they are now, because Bagatinov made Johnson have to move and react. And if he can do more of that, he can really put a stamp on these rounds and win them.
Good knees to the liver coming out of here from Bagatinov. Oh, Johnson transitions so well from a Greco clinch to a Thai clinch. A lot of guys don't make the transition in terms of spacing, and he's very good at moving from one to the other depending on what he needs to do.
What's different about this fight in your estimation, Robert, from the Moraga and, I mean, obviously, Benavidez, the fight didn't last very long. But what do you think is different from the last couple of fights that Johnson has had that Bagatinov has probably given him the stiffest competition up to this point?
Well, Bagatinov's grappling is worlds better than either Moraga's or Johnson's. I would say it's better in terms of pure grappling than Joseph Benavidez as well. The clinch is not a scary place for Bagatinov. John Dodson had no clue what to do in the clinch when Johnson was able to get him there. John Moraga was just comprehensively out-grappled. He had nothing for Demetrius Johnson whenever they weren't standing. Bagatinov's a very well-rounded fighter, and more importantly, he seems very well prepared for this fight. That might just be, the Greg Jackson influence.
He's been able to catch Demetrius Johnson exiting a couple times with those hands down that you mentioned, Robert. The problem is he's only doing it one time. He's not following up with something behind that strike that catches him on the exit or maybe even shooting to the opposite leg of where Johnson is moving. And I think maybe if he tried that, he could get a decisive, dominant position for the first time in this fight.
Well, yeah, interestingly, as we're talking about all of this, Johnson actually has the lead in considerable lead in distance strikes landed. So
Well, he's throwing a lot of leg kicks.
from whatever the
Valentinov is
reasons
not.
are, Demetrius Johnson, as far as the statistics go, is actually beating Bogatinov, but that's not the fight that I'm watching.
Well, from distance in terms of strikes landed, he's a lot more active and he's been a lot more successful. Big slam by Bogatinov.
That was impressive.
Especially to Johnson. I mean, again, the last time Johnson was really kind of dominated from that type of position was when Dominic Cruz was able to just throw him every which way. And Cruz, not just a great fighter, but a substantially larger man.
Who presently only has one leg.
I think if he could just have one leg and fight on one leg, we'd all be happy.
Nick Newell does it with one arm. Just saying, Cruz, man up.
This is some good work here by Bogatinov. Not just the slam, but he's actually started to work the body over when he gets in that tie clinch position. Does leave your ribs very exposed. And a lot of guys, if you're able to get your head in a position where you're not going to be kneed constantly, you can tee off to the body very well. Rick Story does it very well in MMA. It was actually a big tool in the arsenal of the late, great Raymond Decker, who went to Thailand and just beat up all the Thai boxers because he understood fundamental boxing in addition to leg kicks and knees in the clinch.
Yeah, Decker, amazing kickboxer, one of the best ever. And it's an old boxing technique made famous by Archie Moore called the cross-arm defense, where it works even better in the Thai position because you're able to pick off those knees on the inside using your forearms and elbows, and consequently you're in position to dig into the body while your head's being held because their hands are not really a threat at that point. So it works very well, and Bagatinov's using it smartly.
I'm impressed with Bagatinov, ability to walk through all those knees. He has eaten a considerable amount of knees throughout this fight as we move into round 4, and he hasn't been stunned really. It looks like he hasn't been on spaghetti legs or knocked across the cage. He just keeps coming at Demetrius Johnson. I would tell you, this is other than maybe the Dodson fight where Dodson knocked Demetrius Johnson across the cage a few times. This has probably been the one guy he's fought that's really been in his face and giving him a stiff fight.
It was actually a major failing of Joseph Benavidez in their first fight for the flyweight title that he did not apply enough pressure to Demetrius Johnson. Given how close that fight was, the fact that he took his foot off the gas a couple of times, it was a major contributing factor in his not becoming champion.
And I think that has to do with the mental makeup of both guys. Bagatinov has one of the great poker faces in fighting that you'll ever see. This is a guy who does not visibly ever appear discouraged despite what's coming at him. And as we know, the Team Alpha Male motto, they're a little bit of a prima donna camp. So you're seeing the mental difference between these guys as far as maybe they're fighting similar stylistically against Johnson. They want to keep it in close quarters, utilize slams and takedowns, and try to smother his own offense. But Bagatinov has the willpower and the fortitude to get past what's coming at him to try his best.
Well, I think we can owe that to the classic Russian stoicism.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. There's something about that lifestyle that they have that really toughens them up mentally.
Well, when you're born in a snowy tundra, which is also poor, and you went through a period of time where where the government was doing all kinds of things to the family, I would imagine you'd lose your sense of humor and become pretty tough people.
So what you're saying is, in 15 to 20 years, we'll see a rash of great fighters come out of the state of Wyoming?
Yes. And nothing else.
Wyoming has the lowest population of all 50 states.
There's protein in dairy.
But apparently Eric Bischoff sells a mean beer there.
Well, I have been led to believe that. I don't drink, so it's not an issue.
You keep telling everyone that. I feel like you're hiding something.
Yeah, I'm going to open myself up to potentially becoming addicted to a substance that will suck all the money and energy out of my existence.
And this segment of our podcast has been brought to you by Cayman Jack Margarita, 100% blue agave nectar. It makes MMA watchable.
Johnson is starting to mix his clinch striking now with some good elbows to exit. It's really impressive to see because he transitions very quickly from working a knee and then letting go of the clinch with one hand, quick elbow, and then push off to exit without Bagatinov being able to strike him in return.
Bagatinov is very much unable to effectively counter-strike here. For example, he was able to counter-strike Tim Elliott all day long. Demetrius Johnson is more aware of where he is, of where Bagatinov's punches are going to land, and of how to throw enough punches to keep Bagatinov in a defensive posture so that he can escape effectively. That being said, Bagatinov does seem to be getting the range and timing just a little bit. He's come real close to landing hard shots. He's clipped him a couple of times. Nothing fight-ending, but he's starting to kind of get a feel for it, and that's a dangerous spot for Johnson because Bagatinov does have power.
The biggest thing for Ali is when he does see Johnson exiting and throws, he has to move his feet in advance with it because there's a chance he can catch Johnson on the exit, which we've seen a few times, but he catches him on the end of the punch as opposed to flush. And if he would just move his feet about 6 inches, he could really catch him flush and follow up with either another strike or potentially a slam attempt and control him.
If you want an example of how that should work, if you look at what Chris Weidman did to Anderson Silva in their first fight, he wasn't just throwing the punches and watching Anderson lean out of the way. He moved forward knowing Anderson would move back, his feet would be out of position, and he put himself in a great spot to land that fight-ending punch. That's the type of thing Bagatinov should be doing here, moving with Johnson as Johnson is leaning back and trying to get away. That being said, Johnson actually moves his feet when moving backwards as well and doesn't just lean. Oh, nice right hand off of the slip there. Bagatinov has had some moments. I've only got him winning the second round so far, but he is certainly not out of this fight.
I didn't give him the second round. I still have it 3-0 for Johnson, but that's not accurate of how competitive a fight this has been and how hard Johnson's had to work to win these rounds. And could have easily gone, the second round could have easily gone to Bagatinov as well.
I think it's going to be an interesting read on the scorecard when this is all over, and probably one of those that's highly debated and kicked around on 401mania.com in their report format. In their report.
How did you give 4 rounds instead of 3 to John Jones? It was a refrain I heard a great deal because I covered the first Jones-Gustafsson fight, and my official scorecard had John Jones winning 4 rounds to 1, and I caught hell for it.
Do we need to bring up my scorecard for Jose Aldo versus what's his face from the beginning of the year?
Ricardo Lamas.
Yep.
No, we don't.
Ricardo Lamas wins. What an upset.
In fairness, I was really tired when I watched this fight.
I was.
This fight's brought to you by what, Mark?
This fight has been brought to you by... I'm actually putting that in Twitter right now. This fight has been brought to you by Cayman Jack Margarito, 100% blue agave nectar. It makes MMA watchable.
Bagatinov does not seem to have the correct positioning up against the fence to get these takedowns he's going for. Ooh, nice slam there. He's going to turn. Oh, whoa! Was that the end of the round? I didn't see the clock.
Yeah, I thought that was the end of the round. The clock wasn't visible to me, but
okay.
He finally got something working, of course, at the end of the round.
Bagatinov landed a big slam, and the referee immediately stepped in. I thought, if that wasn't the end of the round, he might have injured Johnson. I mean, we have seen a fight end by injury tonight. Another round for Johnson, but this is a heck of a good fight. Bagatinov is more than holding his own. I mean, I don't think he's winning, but this is not a blowout by any stretch of the imagination.
He's not outclassed, and he's making a real case as to why he's arguably the second best featherweight in the world because of how well he's performing against a guy who's been nothing short of dominant against the best featherweights in the UFC.
Ooh, he was close to being choked out there. Johnson had his hands in the right position. Got a replay of the slam. Bagatinov was turning into him. That was clearly his plan there, but if Johnson had had the right pressure, he might have been able to cinch up a choke there. That was dangerous. So
this just in from the boxing channel on Twitter: 117 to 109 Provodnikov versus 114 to 112 Algieri. Chris Algieri is the new champion.
That is a very interesting split on scoring, and Clucky apparently is involved to some extent.
That's why he hasn't shown up here since. He had to get to the boxing gig.
Yeah. Cheap plug, folks. After I view that fight, Gavin Napier and I'll likely be recording either tomorrow at some point or during one of these weeknights, and Provodnikov Algieri will be first and foremost on the discussion based on stat scoring.
All right, Pat, I'm curious. What do you think? We've all kind of agreed Bogatinov is more than likely needs a finish. Just winning a round won't do it. If you had been in his corner, what would you have told him? What's he got to do to really kind of cinch this up? And because he needs a finish, what's he got to do to finish Johnson here?
At this point, he's got to advance anytime Johnson is exiting and throw whatever he's got in his arsenal at him. Punches, kicks, whatever you have to do. If you can force him against the fence and work for another one of those great slams, take it and allow Johnson to rise so you can use his momentum to ride with him and slam him again, and maybe look for a Rustam Kabalov type of scenario where you can hurt him with those slams and potentially finish him with either a ground and pound attack from the top, or an injury from the slam, or even a submission attempt. But he's got to throw everything he has. He cannot clinch. He cannot do anything that's going to kill time because it's his enemy. And he's most importantly got to not allow Johnson to dominate the clinch himself. See, right there he had an opportunity, but now he's clinching.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you. He's got to start being more. He's got to be more effectively aggressive.
Had he been in his corner earlier, the main advice I would have hinted on him was Johnson makes himself very difficult to hit to the head. So when he is doing these exit counters, he tends to lean side to side, throw body shots while he's on the way out because he's not in position to strike back effectively. So you can lower your base and throw to the body and not worry about something coming back at you. And that potentially will slow him down. In addition, leg kicks on the exit. Throw them because you could trip him and force him to the mat and get on top of him and dominate the position from there. And I think, unfortunately, his corner just wasn't telling him these things early on enough, and now he's in a position where he has to go for the finish and fight against the grain of what he normally likes to do, which is grind guys down, wear them down, use his grappling to get a win.
We see the two of them grappling up against the cage as they've done for most of this fight so far. Demetrius Johnson continuing to utilize the knees to the face, and Bogatinov walking right through them. It's been it's for a lot of the same stuff, minute after minute, round after round. This has actually been a very enjoyable fight to watch. It's one of those weird ones where it's like not a lot is happening, but what's happening is still interesting.
Yeah, this should be, one of those fights that there's a lot of action, there's a lot of effective action, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on because neither guy is stopping. Both guys are actually working no matter what position they're in. Both guys are trying to do stuff. We saw plenty of fights tonight where in this position both guys were just kind of leaning there and resting.
We have 90 seconds left of round 5 in this fight in total. Whatever happens, Ali Bogatinov certainly showed that he is up to snuff against Demetrius Johnson. If he should pull out a victory here tonight by decision, split decision probably, I would tell you that that as much as we all hate rematches, I would call for a rematch between these two. I wouldn't mind another 25 minutes of fighting.
Jeez, big uppercut from Bogatinov landed. Mighty Mouse threw a spinning heel kick that just missed. Sadly, this
it looked like Bogatinov got tagged in that exchange.
He got tagged by something, but he also landed 3 punches, I think, on Demetrius Johnson that led to Johnson throwing that kick. Sadly, this is the wrong position for Bogatinov to be in unless he believes he's up on the scorecards. You can't afford to try and clinch and grapple like this if you feel you need a finish or if there's a chance you need a finish. You need to push yourself off, give yourself enough space to throw punches effectively.
They just showed the graphic for total strikes landed, and every single round Demetrius Johnson has more than enough of a lead in strikes landed. That may be the key factor in the judges' scorecards for a dominating decision victory, even though it wasn't a dominating fight.
Well, a lot of fights wind up being closer than the scorecards reflect. We mention it all the time, but it happens sometimes where, Johnson has won arguably every round. I've given him 4 of the 5 pretty easily. And that doesn't mean the fight wasn't close. Uriah Faber and Jens Pulver the first time, Faber got 10-8 round, a 10-8 round on 2 judges' scorecards.
It is amazing. Demetrius Johnson looks like he could go for another 5 rounds. Ali Bogatinov looks like he's been in a fight.
Yeah, Demetrius Johnson he doesn't get hit very often. He makes himself difficult to hit to the head, and he's also an incredibly conditioned athlete. He's one of the best in terms of overall conditioning in the sport. And that's not just because he's a flyweight. I mean, there are a couple of guys who I would put on his level in terms of just pure cardio. They never get tired. I mean, uh, Benson Henderson is another one who just does not get tired, no matter what you do.
Yeah,
Pat,
Ben is one of those guys who closes fights strong, and Johnson is so impressive. I marvel at his conditioning just because of how he carries this weight. He's actually been cutting weight for the first time in his career as a flyweight, and he hasn't lost a step.
what's your whole scorecard read?
I've got it 50-45 for Demetrius Johnson. Certainly don't want to slight Bagatimov, who had an extremely respectable competitive effort against him. Probably the toughest fight we've seen Johnson in, minus 1 round against John Dodson. But just a great fight effort from both guys. It just so happens that one is just a little bit better than the other in every round. And when that guy's one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in MMA and arguably the best in some circles, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Great fight, great effort from both guys, but again, one of the expected great performances we've come to expect from Demetrius Johnson.
I believe that was a 50-45 across all 3 cards.
All right. No controversy here. Well, folks, that just about wraps it up. Seem to have gotten good reviews for tonight's live commentary, so we appreciate everybody who was listening tonight. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do this in the future. Let's get some final words here from my co-commentators. First to you, Pat Mullin, your thoughts on tonight's pay-per-view and whether or not you would be interested in doing this in the future.
Not a great show as a whole, unfortunately, but certainly not as bad as it could have turned out. And surprisingly, let's give some credit to Rory McDonald for that. A very good main event, and a great performance by one of the best around in Demetrius Johnson, a guy who I love to watch fight and has really made a fan of me with his efforts, particularly because he tried. There's a great article by our own Robert Winfree pointing out that Johnson is not happy with where he's at. He always wants to get better, and that's what separates him from so many guys. And that was the high point of the night for me. I had a blast doing this. I hope my contributions went for something and entertained or educated somebody along the way. This made this event much more tolerable than I think we could have had were it not for each other's company and commentary during this and not getting hit with things to shill for 3 hours. I enjoyed it. I definitely look for this in the future again from us. I'd be interested in doing it. I'm sure you guys would as well.
Absolutely. I'm hoping when all 3 of us are available, we can continue to do these live commentaries because I actually found listening to you 2 gentlemen, and I'm not even joking when I say this isn't just shilling, but I found your contributions to what you saw on screen and the technique and the kinds of things that you were identifying, making the experience more enjoyable as a listener, as also as a participant in the commentary. I think you guys bring a lot to the table, and you should be paid for what you do. So hopefully we'll get a chance to do this in the future. Robert, your thoughts on the show and this whole commentary experience?
This show was saved by the last half of the co-main event and a great main event. Everything on the main card that we kind of joked about on paper, paper turned out to be right. I mean, we got Ryan Jimmo in your hot opener, and we got a Ryan Jimmo fight. It was, it was great that Ovince St. Preux actually ended the fight, and all credit to him for going for a finish from an awkward position. It was just one of those fights where not a lot happened, and then there was a finish. Finishes don't make fights exciting. Remember, everyone, Frank Mir did knock out Mirko Cro Cop. Then we got 2 fights that were just kind of awful, in Andrei Arlovsky and Brendan Schaub, wherein Arlovsky won a undeserved split decision. Ryan Bader and Rafael Cavalcante kind of stunk up the joint. But again, the last half, certainly rounds 2 and 3 of McDonald versus Woodley was some good action, a lot of fun to be had. And then we had a really good main event that just from a technical standpoint, from an action standpoint, was just really fun to watch. Demetrius Johnson continues to evolve as a fighter. There was a time when a grappler and a clinch fighter, specifically the caliber of Ali Bagatinov, would have ragdolled him like Dominic Cruz did. He's clearly worked a great deal on that, so credit to him for continuing to improve as a fighter. We got a really good main event. I'm actually a bigger fan of Bagatinov now than I was before. I thought Johnson would kind of steamroll him. I mean, I'm a fan of Ali. I was before tonight, but I have a huge amount of respect and admiration for the skills of Mighty Mouse. And for Bogatinov to go, he went there and he fought him for all 5 rounds. So my hat's off to him. I want to see. I mean, we're more than likely going to get a rematch between Johnson and John Dodson next, just due to a lack of other contenders or name value. But this was a really good performance from Ali. I'd like to see him take on another high name. I mean, if Ian McCall's ranked above him for some reason, put them in there, let Ali school him, and then get another shot at the belt. I mean, there's nothing wrong with rematches when we have good fights and enough space between them. I'm sick of immediate rematches, but I wouldn't mind seeing those two fight again down the road. As for the whole experience, this was fun. Hopefully I didn't suck too bad. To all the listeners out there, my jokes may induce crickets, and so I'll be more of a straight man next time. I think I'll try not to make jokes, but this was a lot of fun listening to Pat talk live, having you kind of between us. I got a kick out of this. So the next time one of these comes around, even if I'm doing live coverage, I don't mind being the the guy who just comes on between rounds and between fights.
The leaderman.
Don't compare me to that guy.
All right. Folks, this once again has been a live special broadcast from the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. Proud to be side by side with Pat Mullin of the Championship Rounds, Robert Winfree of Everyone Loves a Bad Guy, and the 401 Ground and Pound Radio Show, an interim for at least one more week, the Long Road to Ruin. Please go ahead and check out all of our great podcasts on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network on Blog Talk Radio, Stitcher, and iTunes. You can hear all of our podcasts on any one of those venues. That's blogtalkradio.com. Type in Radulich and you'll find everything. All right, so once again, for Pat Mullin, for the Authority on Evil, Robert Winfree, this is the mandated reporter himself, Mr. Mark Radulich, saying, be well, be safe, and behave.